playing as Tathagata in Marvel, I suppressed Thanos for 500 years. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 14 Loki's Deal with Thanos. Chapter 14, Loki and Thanos' Deal, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 14, Loki and Thanos' Deal. Thanos' subordinate reached out for the spear. With a roar, a flash of red light appeared within the rubble, and it exploded. Then, with a whoosh, the spear returned to his hand. Then, his towering figure, spear raised, faced Loki. A brilliant red light emanated from the spear, and his towering presence created an overwhelming sense of oppression. Facing this scene, Loki's expression was solemn, not wanting to take it lightly. The Chitauri army was formidable, and it was said that several of Thanos' personal recruits were particularly formidable. Judging by their attire and tone of voice, this one must have been one of Thanos' own recruits. They were plundering planets, apparently in search of the Infinity Stones, but what they were going to do with them was unknown. However, Odin seemed uninterested in the stone's power. Loki's thoughts were somewhat distracted. But suddenly, he snapped back into consciousness, quickly regaining his composure. Damn it! I just emerged from the dimensional rift, my mind's still a bit hazy. I'm actually losing my focus at this moment. Loki gritted his teeth, clenching his dagger tightly as he stared at the enemy's spear. He'd swiftly counterattack if the enemy attacked. But at that moment, the nearby void buzzed with a flash of white light. Then, a massive projection appeared. It was a head with purple skin. Its expression was calm, yet it exuded a powerful aura. Seeing this projection, Loki was startled. Thanos also looked at Loki. His men slowly knelt on one knee. Thanos said calmly, "You're special. You must have some connection to Asgard." Loki frowned at this. While Thanos was powerful, Loki, as the second prince of Asgard, had been superior to the billions of beings in the Nine Realms since childhood, so he wasn't intimidated by him at all. Thanos seemed to ponder. Then, he added, "I'm short on men. Would you be willing to serve as my subordinate? Go to Earth, open a space portal, and allow the Chitauri to descend upon Earth." Upon hearing this, Loki understood that this meant they were going to Earth to seize the Infinity Stones. Which low-level planet would have the Infinity Stones, Loki wondered. However, he didn't dwell on it. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, "What's in it for me? Once you successfully open the space portal, the Chitauri will descend upon Earth, and you'll be able to command them at will. And after conquering Earth, you'll be the ruler of the planet," Thanos promised. Loki's eyes lit up at this. He wasn't particularly interested in ruling Earth. He wanted to be king of Asgard. But he was very interested in commanding the Chitauri. The Chitauri are powerful. If they descend upon Earth, I can lead them to kill Thor and that old sun even with all his might. Old sun would be no match for the Chitauri, Loki thought excitedly. Lin Feng had foiled his plan to kill Thor, so he desperately wanted to kill Lin Feng. With this in mind, Loki smiled at Thanos and said, "Okay, I promise. But let me be clear, I'm not going to be your underling. I'm doing you a favor." Thanos was slightly startled. However, it didn't matter to him. He nodded, "Yes." Then, a flash of blue light appeared, and a scepter appeared, floating towards Loki. Loki reached out and took it. The scepter was about a meter long, with a bird-like head, shimmering with a brilliant light. It seemed to contain an inexplicable spiritual power. "This scepter is yours. It will help you accomplish your mission better," Thanos said calmly. The moment Loki covered the scepter, he felt the power of the blue light and immediately realized its power. "Mind Stone," he gasped. Then, calming down, he added, "Haha, with this scepter, this mission is incredibly easy." Thanos looked at the beaming Loki, a hint of teasing and anticipation flickering in his eyes. Then, he vanished. Earth. China, National Historical Archives. It was already nightfall, but Professor Feng Min was still busy among the bookshelves. The archives housed a variety of precious historical materials, including books unearthed during Feng Min's youthful excavations of mountain ruins. And what he was looking for was a worm-eaten fragment among those books. He wanted to see if the person recorded in that fragment was the same person who now appeared in the public eye as an old son. That's strange. Where did that fragment go back then? Professor Feng Min asked, puzzled, rummaging through the various bookshelves. To make his search easier, he even dumped all the ancient books he had searched on the floor. These ancient books were extremely valuable. If they were taken outside, wealthy book lovers would be scrambling to get them. It wasn't piled up on the ground like it was now. But at this moment, Feng Min couldn't care less. He desperately wanted to find the fragmented copy from back then, because the information recorded in it could potentially overturn public perception. Where did I put it? Feng Min's forehead was covered with sweat beneath his graying hair. He kept searching through the ancient books, then putting them on the ground. He was already exhausted from the search. But his determination and excitement kept him going. Finally, his hard work paid off. As he put the books on the ground again, he suddenly saw a black book sandwiched between two ancient books on the second-to-last shelf of the bookshelf next to him. At the same time, an intuition told him that this was the ancient book he was looking for. Feng Min's heart moved, and he hurried forward to pull out the ancient book. Upon seeing it, Feng Min was instantly excited. Haha, I found it. I finally found it. This was the fragmented copy he had read all those years ago. Feng Min beamed. If the character described in this book is truly the exact same Sun Wukong, what a tremendous discovery this would be. Feng Min had unearthed this book during an archaeological excavation in his middle age, but after so many years, he could barely remember its contents. But if the image depicted in this fragment truly matched that of Sun Wukong, then this discovery would be far more remarkable than Columbus's discovery of the New World. Holding the black fragment, Feng Min felt both excited and nervous. The excitement was obvious. The nervousness stemmed from the fear that he'd made a mistake, and that the image depicted in this fragment wasn't the same Sun Wukong. If that were the case, his excitement would be in vain. Furthermore, the origins of that Sun Wukong remained unclear. But regardless, he'd found the book, so he had to read it. With mixed feelings, Feng Min took a deep breath and, with mixed feelings, flipped open the black cover. The first, yellowish-brown page had much blurred text and was riddled with insect holes. But the most striking thing was a depiction of a character. The moment Feng Min saw it, she froze in shock. Chapter 15 caused a sensation on the entire internet. The origin of Sun Wukong was found. Chapter 15 The whole network is in an uproar. The origin of Sun Wukong has been found. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 15 The whole network is in an uproar. The origin of Sun Wukong has been found. Feng Min was so excited that even the hands holding the ancient book were shaking. The description of the character in the ancient book showed that he had a hairy face, exquisite clothes and attire, holding a stick in his right hand, and the expression on his face was vivid, unruly and domineering. It's exactly the same appearance. Feng Min was excited, and quickly looked at the text below. The great sage equaling heaven, Sun Wukong, was born in Huaguo Mountain. Even the name is the same. Now it can be confirmed that the Sun Wukong is the character recorded in this ancient book, Feng Min said excitedly. When I unearthed this fragment and flipped through it, I thought it was just a collection of strange tales, so I didn't take it seriously. I never imagined its accounts would be true. Suddenly, Feng Min thought again, and wondered, but if Sun Wukong is a historical figure, how did he survive to this day? Was he an immortal ancient being? Feng Min paused. He thought about it, and the power Sun Wukong displayed made immortality seem understandable. So, the era in which this Sun Wukong lived must have been remarkable, and the historical data we currently have is precisely lacking information about that era. Feng Min frowned. He felt that he needed to conduct extensive research into the era in which Sun Wukong lived. It was truly an extraordinary era. After all, it could produce a figure as immortal and powerful as Sun Wukong. But, another question remains, why did this Sun Wukong never appear before, yet appear now? Could it be related to the recent extraordinary events? Feng Min pondered again. He pondered this carefully for a moment, feeling uncertain about the matter and needing further research. Thinking of this, Feng Min didn't hesitate. He pulled out his phone and called the president of Wukong University. He wanted to report this matter to the president and secure more resources to investigate the matter. Hello, an elderly voice answered as the call connected. Old Feng, what's up, Old Feng? It's so late, I'm already in bed, getting ready for sleep, Feng Min excitedly exclaimed. Old Zhao, something big is going on. Big? What's that big? I found out where that Sun Wukong came from. What did you say? Zhao Songyang was taken aback. He had, of course, seen the videos of Sun Wukong circulating online. This Sun Wukong had a mysterious origin, never seen before. Some said he was an alien, and there were many such claims. "Where are you?" Zhao Songyang asked quickly. The historical archives. Zhao Songyang was startled by this, confused as to what he was doing there. Could it be related to Sun Wukong's origins? But he didn't dwell on it. He'd find out once he got there. "Okay, I'll be right there. Wait for me." With that, Zhao Songyang hurriedly got up, dressed, and left, even as his wife complained. He rushed to the library. He saw Feng Min sitting among a pile of ancient books. He hurried over. Old Feng Min, seeing Zhao Songyang approach, also stood up, holding onto a nearby bookshelf. Zhao Songyang approached and got straight to the point, asking, "You said on the phone that you'd figured out the origins of that Sun Wukong." "Yes, what origins? That's a long story," Feng Min said with a smile. "I once led a team to a newly discovered ruin deep in the mountains. We unearthed a number of ancient books there, including a worm-eaten fragment. The character depicted in it was exactly like the Sun Wukong." Zhao Songyang was startled, took a breath, and quickly asked, "Where's that fragment?" "Let me see it." Feng Min handed it over. Zhao Songyang flipped open the fragment and was immediately shocked. "It's really the same," he exclaimed in amazement. "Yes," Feng Min said, "so that Sun Wukong wasn't an alien, but an ancient Chinese figure. Furthermore, the era he lived in was a remarkable one, unknown to us modern people." "Remarkable era? What do you mean?" Zhao Songyang's expression froze as he realized what was happening. Indeed, the fact that Sun Wukong could still live to this day and possess such power, the ability to fly and burrow into the earth, speaks volumes about the remarkable era he lived in. Otherwise, how could he have such power? Seeing Zhao Songyang's stunned expression, Feng Min knew he understood. Without further explanation, she said, "What we need to do now is study the conditions of that era. This is something that would shock the world. And who knows, perhaps once we understand it, it will be of benefit to us in our own time." "Yes," Zhao Songyang agreed with Feng Min. "This was a big deal. I'll call the higher-ups right now and report this." Then, Zhao Songyang reported the matter to his superiors. The higher-ups were also shocked and immediately agreed to their investigation, offering any resources they could. "You know, this kind of thing is a top priority, no matter which country it happens to be." And with the government's permission, this matter reached all major newspapers and media outlets. Rumors were circulating online that Sun Wukong was an alien, and now that evidence had been found proving he was an ancient Chinese figure, it was time to publicize it. All major news outlets and newspapers rushed to report on the story. Even online platforms like Zhihu, Sohu, and Penguin, as well as short videos like Douyin, Kuaishao, and Bilibili, quickly spread the news. Through these various channels, the news quickly became a sensation across the internet. Hero's identity revealed. He's not an alien. Sun Wukong's identity has been discovered. Shocking. So this is how the hero became known. A myriad of news stories appeared online, but the core message was the same. Sun Wukong's identity had been discovered. Beyond online media, newspapers were also radiating their last breath of life, creating a scene where people once again crowded around newsstands, waiting to buy a copy. This was a moment of special significance. However, the internet's memory is limited. If you wanted to pass on a piece of information, the print version was the best choice. Newsstands and bookstores were sold out, and some even started paying exorbitant prices to buy the day's front page. On the streets, in offices, schools, and even in mental hospitals, practically everyone was talking about it. Holy crap! Is this true? They've found out Sun Wukong's identity? No way. Isn't he an alien? How can that be found out? Aliens. Who told you about aliens? Isn't that what's being spread all over the internet? If you were an Earthling, how could you be so powerful? Even Iron Man isn't that powerful, right? Yeah, what the hell? Aliens. Are your aliens wearing ancient clothes? Damn. It's as good as not publishing this news. They say they've found out Sun Wukong's origins, but they won't reveal them yet. Isn't that really frustrating? Countless people were curious about the origins of this Sun Wukong. But just then, a post on Wukong University's official website instantly caused another internet sensation. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. 194. Chapter 193. What kind of person is Dijun? 194. Chapter 193. What kind of person is Dijun? 2024-1002. Author, Good Monster. Chapter 193. What kind of person is Dijun? It's truly astonishing that, as a materialized being, she possesses powers approaching those of an innate being. Dark creatures like Dormammu, lingering in the dark dimension, have already treaded halfway into the realm of the innate. While their power cannot compare to a fully realized innate being like Dijun, they have already reached the realm of rules. In Dormammu's world, he is the rule, he is the controller. Without the intervention of a greater power, he could easily become a deity in his own world. Hela is about to reach this realm as well. With a wave of her hands, countless spikes pierced Dijun. You dare to show off your petty tricks in front of me? Dijun's voice was thick with sarcasm. He remained motionless, allowing the spikes to pierce closer, then suddenly solidified and gradually dissipated. How is this possible? How could this happen? Hela stared in disbelief. She barely even saw how Dijun struck before her attack was completely neutralized. This level of power was beyond her comprehension. She had never encountered anything like this in her conquests of the 9 realms. When she was trapped in the dark dimension by Dormammu, he was helpless against her. Thinking of this, she secretly resented Dormammu. He had betrayed her. But the arrow had been shot, she had already led her army to Blue Star. Failure to return victorious would be a humiliation worse than death. Since Dijun's power was so unimaginable, she had no choice but to use her trump card. Die, Hela waved her hand, and a javelin appeared out of thin air. She hurled it with all her might, and it streaked through the sky like a meteor, piercing Dijun. Thor, look! That's it, Loki shouted, staring at the meteor like light in the sky. That's my father's weapon. That's the spear of Gungnir. Hela has indeed murdered my father. Thor's eyes were red as he glared at Hela in anger. But he was also well aware of the power of the Gungnir, and he quickly warned Dijun, Great God Dijun, be careful. That's the Gungnir, it hits the target. Dijun in the sky also sensed this power. Although this weapon was under Hela's control, its rank seemed beyond the level expected of a being of Hela's level, approaching Dijun's own. It seemed to be a power evolved from the laws of nature, an innate power. And unlike Hela's ambiguous power and Dormammu's halfway to the innate realm, this one seemed to have already stepped 1 foot into the realm of the innate. A weapon's rank surpassed its wielder. How intriguing. Hela was unaware of Dijun's thoughts. She simply hurled the Gungnir frantically, expecting it to unleash its unwavering power. After all, the Gungnir was imbued with her own power of death. It was the weight of power she placed great hopes on, the mysterious power she had just touched. With this power, she could command the army of the dead and achieve unparalleled victory. Now, she could only hope that this power of death would bring her unexpected rewards. Time seemed to freeze as the spear of Gungnir slowly approached, carrying immense pressure. Though slow, it seemed unstoppable, creating a suffocating, oppressive feeling. The air around her twisted with this pressure, as if demonstrating the spear's immense power. The previously roaring cheers of the crowd fell silent. Realizing the immense threat this weapon posed to the demon Emperor Dijun, Loki and Thor were busy clearing the battlefield, trying to persuade the surviving Asgardians to lay down their weapons and abandon their plans to invade Blue Planet. Many of the Asgardians, caught up in the conflict, chose to heed Thor's advice, but they remained glued to the live broadcast. After all, the outcome of the battle depended on the key figures there, Hela and Dijun. A victory for Hela would undoubtedly make Blue Planet a target. A victory for Dijun would prove that Blue Planet's strength was indeed formidable. Seeing Dijun easily neutralize Hela's attacks, Strange and Stark were about to breathe a sigh of relief and clean up the battlefield when Hela unleashed the Gungnir and charged at Dijun. The overwhelming pressure filled them all with worry for Dijun. Watching the live broadcast, citizens around the world, who had previously believed themselves safe, grew nervous, sensing the weapon was about to strike their patron saint. In this tense moment, everyone closely watched Dijun's reaction. Only Hashimoto Kanzuki was distracted. Her gaze wasn't on Dijun in the sky, but on Lin Feng, who was in the corner of the screen. Unlike Strange and Stark beside him, Lin Feng's face was filled with ease, unfazed by any concern for Dijun. Is this the reaction to being able to communicate with a god and understand his powers? Professor Lin, you are truly remarkable, Hashimoto Kanzuki muttered to herself. Hela was astonished to see the Gungnir reach Dijun unhindered. Many people closed their eyes. But the next moment, look! Is that Lord Dijon's power? With a few shouts, many people opened their eyes again. The Gungnir, which should have pierced Dijon, was now held effortlessly in Dijon's hand. He sensed the faint scent of decay, but admired the weapon with unconcern. This is indeed a fine weapon for you now. It's a shame you haven't been able to unleash its true power. What a waste. While admiring the weapon, Dijon felt a touch of regret. How could it be possible? Heila's eyes widened, watching in disbelief as her weapon was effortlessly grasped by someone else. Nothing is impossible. You can't control this power, you can't unleash its full potential. Let me demonstrate to you what it means to strike with a guaranteed strike. Dijon's clear voice rang out, carrying an irresistible majesty. He grasped the Gungnir, turned it, and aimed it at Heila. Heila felt a profound threat, a pressure even greater than the fear she felt when she was exiled by Odin, and even more unsettling than Dormammu's dark dimension. What frightened her most was that the tip of Gungnir's spear seemed to carry the scent of death. This scent had always been a delight for her during her conquests of the 9 realms, but now, with Gungnir pointed at her, she felt not joy but dread. Fenrir, my dear, flee, Heila muttered to herself, determined to escape this horrible place. She no longer cared about the shame of defeat or the infamy of a deserter. Compared to staying alive, all else was meaningless. Though she had once cherished honor, when death truly approached, she chose to live in humiliation. However, Fenrir seemed frozen in fear, frozen in place. No matter how Heila called out, he simply stood there motionless. Damn you, beast! How could you be so unreliable in the most crucial moment? Heila cursed angrily, preparing to leap from Fenrir's back and escape. But then she realized she couldn't move either. This was the secret of the Gungnir's guaranteed hit. Once locked onto its target, the target could only wait for death, immobilized and unable to escape Gungnir's pursuit. Heila could only watch helplessly as the Gungnir edged closer to her body, then pierced her heart. The dark, corrosive force of decay on the spear's tip pierced through her heart. It was absurd. The death force on the spear's tip was originally intended to defeat Dijon, but it would become the weapon that ended her own life. A sardonic smile played on Heila's lips as she closed her eyes in resignation. In her final moments, she wondered only what Dijon was capable of, that he could alter the Gungnir's trajectory and thwart her invasion. Bang! A deafening explosion echoed, and Heila's body instantly disintegrated, marking her end, death. With his solemn countenance, Dijon unleashed a deafening roar. Children of China, sing my name. Ah, we've won. Chen Haitian and the others rushed to each other, their faces brimming with joy. Ultron's internet quickly spread the news of Heila's defeat, and the people cheered with ecstasy. On the streets of China, people streamed out of their homes, clapping, cheering, and congratulating each other, releasing their inner excitement. It had been a long time since they had experienced such an exciting event. Dijon's reappearance not only resolved the fate of the Earth, but also resolved the issue of life and death for the Earth. How could the Chinese people not be filled with excitement? Despite their excitement, they remained steadfast, many chanting, Emperor Jun. Demon Emperor. Emperor Jun. Demon Emperor. Initially, it was just a handful, but soon, the common people, moved by Emperor Jun's divine might, joined in, their voices coalescing into a united resounding cheer, Emperor Jun. Demon Emperor. Emperor Jun. Demon Emperor. In stark contrast, the American dignitaries saw China's fortune as misfortune. In an era where technology should have dominated the global landscape, they witnessed not only the resurgence of supernatural power but also the rapid transformation of the world. The United States, once the self-proclaimed son of God, was now increasingly scorned, while China, the nation they had long sought to contain, was emerging as a beloved paradise. This disparity left them feeling a thorn in their side, a thorn in their side. Yet, they were powerless to reverse the situation. The power of the gods was supernatural, beyond common sense. It transcended human cognition and logic, possessing power beyond imagination. The current U.S. president sat dejectedly in his chair, unwilling to remain in this depressing position any longer. In just a few months in office, he had not only witnessed a rise of China but also wrecked relations with the country, earning numerous enemies worldwide. Now, the outcry against him from the American public was a source of immense distress. He slammed his fist on the table in anger. Why do only Chinese gods appear? Where are our patron saints? God, where are you? Why don't you come out to protect your people? Why do you let them suffer? Outside his office, security personnel listened to the U.S. president's hysterics with disdain. This incompetent man was only capable of impotent rage, devoid of any sense of practicality. He had brought the U.S. into its current predicament, yet he only complained, taking no concrete action to correct the situation. It was hard to understand why he was elected president in the first place. Koizumi Rikuro watched the scene of Hila's destruction with mixed feelings, feeling a mixture of relief and a subtle sense of unease. It was foreseeable that after this battle, China's fame would spread far and wide, its rise to unstoppable power. People from all corners of the world sought the identity of the god radiating golden light. His divine might was as vast as the ocean, drawing all to his submission. Furthermore, he had personally witnessed the defeat of the Hila invasion army and the demise of Hila, becoming a veritable protector in the eyes of all. My name is Dijun became the clue they all sought. Upon learning that Dijun was a mythological deity from the ancient civilization of Huaxia in the Far East, many began to yearn for China. China, the Far East. China, the hope of humanity. Many wealthy individuals chose to fly or ferry to China, either to settle down or temporarily. Many ordinary people, unable to secure air, boat, or train tickets, simply packed up their belongings and attempted to cross the mountains and rivers to sneak across the border into China. However, before they could act, the Chinese official media released a news report: their border was no longer guarded by troops. Because the border was protected by a protective shield bestowed by Dijun, those without Dijun's approval could not enter China. In other words, even if they tried to sneak across, they couldn't. Lamentations erupted from around the world. Dijun's voice echoed once again: "My people everywhere, do not lament, but rise up. I will continue to protect the peace of earth. I hope you will sing my name and strive hard." After the battle, Dijun remained. He watched as Hila's figure dissipated and flew off to the fairy island. Lin Feng's incarnation of Dijun had reaped a rich harvest. The system reported that he had not only completed the SSS level role-playing objective and earned 1.5 million hero mission points, but also, thanks to the global attention and faith, his role-playing points had skyrocketed to 100 million. This was a staggering figure, enough to allow him to temporarily activate the Tongshan Patriarch's role. However, now was not the time to introduce Tongshan Patriarch. His power was too great. If Lin Feng remembered correctly, Thanos would invade next. It wouldn't be too late to introduce Tongshan Patriarch then. But after all, the harvest was huge, and after returning to China, he could hardly conceal the joy on his face. "Professor Lin, why are you so happy?" a pleasant voice came. Lin Feng had just returned to his residence when someone came to visit. The pleasant voice sounded soft and sweet, and strangely familiar. Lin Feng didn't need to turn around to know that it was Hashimoto Kanayu, the secretary from Sakura country. Perhaps because of the significant increase in points, his mood became particularly cheerful. He turned around politely and said, "Hello, Ms. Hashimoto, how can I help you?" Chapter 17 Lecture officially begins. Chapter 17 The lecture officially begins. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 17 The lecture officially begins. Backstage at the Great Hall. Professor Feng Min had already compiled the information he had analyzed so far. Although the fragments contained limited information, they contained information about Sun Wukong's origins, birth, and other circumstances. With only a few minutes left before the lecture began, Feng Min felt both excited and nervous. Explaining Sun Wukong's origins meant unveiling a mysterious era never before known. The higher-ups were also watching closely. Professor Feng Min took a deep breath, then exhaled, trying to calm himself, but found it impossible, so he gave up. At that moment, Principal Zhao Songgyang hurried over and asked, "Mr. Feng, it's almost time. Did you bring your notes?" "Did you?" "Yes, don't worry." Feng Min patted the old-fashioned notebook on the table. Zhao Songgyang nodded repeatedly. Sweat dripped down his face, and he went to have the sound and lighting staff double-check the equipment. Because this was a live broadcast, they had to ensure everything was working perfectly. The sound and lighting staff also confirmed that the equipment was functioning properly. Soon, it was time. Feng Min said something to Zhao Songgyang, then, under Zhao Songgyang's nervous, expectant gaze, she headed towards the aisle leading to the podium. Upon reaching the podium, she saw the seats packed, thronged with people, and numerous media reporters. Everyone was waiting for the lecture to begin. The live stream had also begun. Immediately, a large number of netizens joined in, their comments flooding in. "Ha ha ha, I'm the first one, wow. Wow, It's finally starting, damn it. I didn't get a ticket to Beijing, otherwise I'd be the only one sitting there. Don't even mention it. I'm going to write a huge miserable on your legs. I didn't get a ticket either, but I drove to Beijing and now I'm stuck on the highway. There are so many people, it's outrageous, I'm so jealous. I have to work and can't go there. I can only watch the live broadcast, hurry up. Start soon. I've been waiting for ages, yet. Where did Sun Wukong come from? Is he an alien? I even made a bet with someone. It's 1,000 yuan. Netizens excitedly posted comments, eager to know Sun Wukong's origins. Meanwhile, Lin Feng and Tang Yiming had also arrived. They were sitting together. Tang Yiming was a bit overweight, but when he saw Feng Min emerge, he immediately became excited. He grabbed Lin Feng's arm and said, "Fuck, brother Feng, look. Professor Feng Min is coming out." He and Lin Feng were both researchers of folk history, so naturally, they were very familiar with this kind of official-level figure. Yet, Lin Feng smiled and nodded. "So exciting. This is the first time I've met him in person," Tang Yiming said with a beaming smile. "I wonder what he'll say later." Tang Yiming was extremely curious about Sun Wukong's origins, but he hadn't been able to find any relevant information. Suddenly, a thought occurred to him, and he winked. "Brother Feng, didn't you say last time that you also knew about Sun Wukong? Then, why don't you go up and say a few words later?" Tang Yiming's words were not malicious, he was just teasing Lin Feng. Lin Feng understood what he meant. He smiled and said, "Not necessarily. If he's wrong, I'll correct him." Hearing this, Tang Yiming curled his lips. "Good boy. I told you were fat. And you're still panting." Lin Feng smiled and said nothing more. He looked at Feng Min at the podium, anticipating what he would say. Professor Feng Min looked around and saw the packed room. He was excited, knowing everyone had been waiting for a long time. He was about to speak, but suddenly, he noticed a young man. For some reason, he thought the young man's eyes seemed a little strange. However, he didn't pay much attention to it, thinking he was overthinking it. "First of all, welcome everyone here. Our lecture officially begins now." With that, Feng Min led the applause. The audience followed suit, and for a moment, the applause was thunderous. Even Principal Zhao Songgang, watching this scene from backstage, joined in the applause with excitement. Feng Min pressed his hands down, and after the applause died down, he smiled again. "This Monkey King, Sun Wukong, has been all the rage online lately. His mystery and power have us all very curious about his origins. Some people online say he's an alien, just like those steel giants." Feng Min paused, then added, "But after 2 days of research, we've discovered that this Sun Wukong is not an alien at all." These words startled many in the audience, as they had all assumed this Sun Wukong was an alien. After all, how could a native Earthling look so strange and powerful? Many viewers in the live stream were also surprised. "Holy shit, not an alien? I always thought it was." "Yeah, I thought so too. Ha ha ha, I knew it wasn't an alien. I won the bet and earned my friends $1,000. If it's not an alien, then what could it be?" The comments continued, and more people grew excited and curious. Professor Feng Min took in the surprised expressions of the audience. He paused, then added, "Our research has revealed that Sun Wukong was actually an ancient Chinese figure from a certain era." The audience was stunned. The livestream viewers were also shocked. What? Sun Wukong was actually an ancient Chinese figure? How could this be possible? Just as everyone was stunned, Professor Feng Min continued, "Research shows that Sun Wukong was born in Huaguo Mountain. He sprang from a stone and was born a monkey. With no parents, he was raised by nature. Later, he sailed to sea in search of immortality, learning the art of immortality, the 72 transformations, and the flying magic of the somersault cloud, which allows him to fly a distance of 108,000 miles with a single somersault." Wow! The moment these words were spoken, there was an instant uproar. Everyone was stunned once again, almost unable to believe their ears. "Holy crap, popped out of a stone? That's so awesome. How did he do that? Immortality, 72 transformations. No wonder he's still alive and so powerful. Damn. How can he appear and disappear without a trace? That flying magic is incredible. A somersault can take him 100,000 miles. That's faster than the speed of light. Amazing. Then where did he get that staff? Does it have a name?" There was an uproar, some excited, some curious, some questioning. Professor Feng Min smiled, then raised his hand to quiet everyone down. Once everyone quieted down, he continued, after Sun Wukong mastered his magic and returned to Flower Fruit Mountain, something happened. We haven't found any records of these events yet. However, afterward, he went to the Dragon Palace in the East China Sea to seek a weapon. And so he found that staff. It's called the Rui Jingu Bang. It weighs a whopping 13,500 kilograms, wow. These words caused an uproar again. 195. Chapter 194. The next target, Thanos. 195. Chapter 194, next target, Thanos. 2024-1003. Author, Good Monster. Chapter 194, next target, Thanos. Hashimoto Kanyu smiled faintly. Ever since Emperor Jin returned, he hadn't disappeared, but had chosen to return to the fairy island. Everyone longed to be chosen by the gods once again, like Lin Feng, and to set foot on the fairy island. However, as everyone flocked to the fairy island, only Hashimoto Kanyu turned her attention to Lin Feng. Hearing Lin Feng's question, Hashimoto Kanyu suppressed her excitement and said coquettishly, Professor Lin, you haven't answered my question yet. Lin Feng smiled faintly, so that's it. Well, I'll tell you, the Demon King has returned, and China is blessed. That's why I'm happy. Hashimoto Kanyu bit her lip, trying to look both cute and sexy. Then, Professor Lin, can I ask you a question? Lin Feng saw that Hashimoto Kanyu was trying to use a honey trap, but didn't point it out. Since their first meeting, Lin Feng had been intentionally or unintentionally guiding her in this direction. She'd only just grasped his meaning, a bit slow indeed. Still, he politely said, ask, rising to make her a cup of coffee. Hashimoto Kanyu summoned her courage, Professor Lin, what exactly is your relationship with the gods? Lin Feng's movements remained unwavering, yet a hint of surprise lingered within her. This woman was truly remarkable. Even Chen Haitian and Loki had already accepted Lin Feng's role in communicating with the Chinese gods, yet Hashimoto Kanyu was still pondering the mystery of Lin Feng's connection. However, as long as he didn't expose the truth, no one could do anything to him. Lin Feng handed her a cup of coffee and replied, somewhat irrelevantly, you could research China's history of resisting invasions, it's closely related to your Sakura country. Hashimoto Kanyu didn't get an answer, assuming Lin Feng meant he'd only answer her after understanding this history. She bowed deeply and said sincerely, in that case, I'll take my leave. Shortly after Hashimoto Kanzuki left, Thor and Loki arrived. In the immediate aftermath of the war, reconstruction became a top priority, and many people headed to the severely damaged areas to work. Meanwhile, Stark had returned to his residence, busy developing a new intelligent butler. Senna was trying to understand how Jin transmitted his voice across the globe, Natasha was busy with the Avengers' diplomatic work, and Strange was working on the front lines of reconstruction. Only the brothers Loki and Thor chose to approach Lin Feng immediately. Dale followed behind them, a hint of fear on his face that hadn't been there for him for a long time. Lin Feng knew something was wrong from their solemn expressions. Still, he asked with concern, what's wrong? What's going on? Aren't you supposed to be rebuilding your civilization in Asgard now? Thor and Loki exchanged a glance, their understanding clear. From their glances, they confirmed that Loki would return to Asgard to oversee the overall situation, while Thor would remain to explain the situation. Professor Lin Feng was also a wise man in this world. As long as Thor explained the situation, Lin Feng would tell him what to do. So Loki had no fear that his reckless brother would get into trouble. Loki said goodbye and took his leave. Lin Feng looked thoughtfully at the mark left by the rainbow bridge on his floor. Thor, seeing the scorch marks in Lin Feng's focused gaze, assumed he was bothered by the incident and quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Professor Lin. I'll compensate you. Del couldn't stand it any longer. Thor, if you still don't explain your purpose, then I will, Thor hurriedly said. Okay. Professor Lin, we have something very important to discuss with you. After Lin Feng invited them both to sit, he calmly served them coffee. This was his little trick. The more majestic the gods, the more approachable he, as their spokesperson, would be. Without comparison, there was no gap. The more humble he was, the higher his status in the eyes of others. Those who interacted closely with him, especially those who knew him well, understood that divine authority was inviolable. After handing over the coffee, he politely asked, "What's the matter? Judging by your expressions, this feels more serious than Hela's invasion." He'd only meant it as a joke to brighten the mood, but Thor's expression had grown grave, as if acknowledging his statement. Thor's face was grave as he spoke. The reason the people of Asgard were willing to follow Hela in her invasion of the blue planet wasn't just because they were coerced by the Death Army, but also out of gratitude. Gratitude? Lin Feng was puzzled. Thor nodded heavily. It's gratitude. Loki and I fled to Blue Star because Thanos invaded Asgard. My father Odin was too old to resist Thanos. According to the news from the people of Asgard, we learned that after Loki and I fled with the Infinity Stones, it was Hela who appeared and saved the people of Asgard from Thanos. Thor paused after saying this in one breath, a trace of cold sweat seeping out of his forehead. Now that Hela is dead, I'm afraid the next one to invade Blue Star will be Thanos. After hearing this, Lin Feng's face flashed with a look of indifference. Thor, are you thinking too complicated? Since Hela was able to rescue all the people of Asgard from Thanos, her strength should be enough to make Thanos retreat. In other words, Thanos' threat should be less than that of Hela. He took a sip of coffee and said slowly. Upon hearing this, Thor, in his anxiety, crushed the cup in his hand, sending shards of glass scattering along with his coffee. He remained oblivious and quickly corrected Lin Feng. No, Professor Lin Feng, you misunderstood. I've fought both of them before and know their strength. I'm confident I can defeat Hela, but against Thanos, I feel I have no chance. Lin Feng sighed inwardly as he watched Thor, who spoke endlessly and exaggerating Thanos' power. Thor had recognized the gap between himself and advanced beings like Hela and Thanos, but he hadn't considered the possibility of reaching that level himself. It seemed he'd have to explain his problem to him when the time came. Lin Feng interrupted Thor. Excuse me, Thor. The gap between you and them is quite large. How can I compare their strength and threat? Thor paused, then pondered for a moment before offering a more convincing answer. Hela's power rivals that of my father, Odin. Even in his prime, my father could still contain Hela. But even in his prime, even my father couldn't stop Thanos' invasion. Del was taken aback by this. While she knew Thanos was formidable, the specifics remained an abstract concept. Only after Thor gave her a specific description did she truly grasp Thanos' terrifying power. The Dark Elves had always been irreconcilable with Asgard, and Odin was their hated leader. The Dark Elves had attempted to assassinate Odin countless times, but each time failed. Because Odin was still Odin, even in his old age, he was still the overlord who once dominated the Nine Realms. His immense strength troubled even the Dark Elves' leader, Molesky, so much so that he even considered using the power of the ether to defeat him. Because even the Dark Elves, with their own strength, couldn't defeat Odin. This was Odin, Lord of the Nine Realms. Even the proud Dark Elves had to acknowledge his might. But if such a powerful being, even in his prime, couldn't stop Thanos' invasion, how could one assess Thanos' own strength? Lin Feng feigned contemplation. But why would he invade Earth? After a long conversation, Thor felt thirsty and unceremoniously reached for a glass of water. Del answered Lin Feng's question. I'm afraid he's here for the Infinity Stones. Infinity Stones? Lin Feng's voice hinted with doubt, but his mind was already clear. Yes, while the trajectory of history had differed from the original scenario where Thanos and Hela had no intersection, the relentless crunch of history had left the major events of the universe unchanged. Loki's invasion, the formation of the Avengers, Hydra's attempted coup, Ultron's awakening, Dormammu's invasion, and Hela's command of the Death Army, all unfolded one after another. While the specific details have shifted, the general direction remains unchanged. Therefore, the logical next step is Thanos' quest for the 6 Infinity Stones, attempting to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Lin Feng had originally planned to explore the limits of the god's power in the cosmos, but the threat of Thanos' invasion forced him to temporarily slow down his exploration. Thor finished his water, wiped his mouth, and added, yes, they are the Infinity Stones. There are 6 in total. It is rumored that they are the embodiment of the laws of the origin of the universe, and later divided into 6 gems. We Asgardians call them Infinity Stones. They represent time, mind, power, space, reality, and soul respectively. Possessing one of them is enough to easily destroy a planet. Thanos wants to collect all the gems. I don't know his purpose, but it must be very terrifying. Lin Feng thought for a while. Ultron's body structure is embedded with a Mind Stone. Doctor Strange holds the Time Stone, and there is also the Cosmic Cube, which is the Space Stone. If I remember correctly, it should be guarded by Steve Rogers. As long as Thanos collects the other 3 gems, he will come to invade the Earth at any time, right? Thor nodded solemnly. Yes, Professor Lin, Don't underestimate Thanos' determination. The name Thanos is a literal translation of your Chinese language. According to the transliteration, he should be called Thanos, which corresponds to the English initials of the 6 Infinity Stones. According to my father, Thanos wasn't originally called that. Lin Feng's expression became as solemn as Thor's. So, to achieve his goal, he actually changed his name to the abbreviation of the 6 Infinity Stones, constantly reminding himself to achieve it. This Thanos truly possesses the fortitude of a man who will endure hardships and persevere until he achieves his goal. Thus, Earth, barely escaping the shadow of Hela's invasion, now faces the threat of Thanos again. Lin Feng put on his glasses and said in a deep voice, "There's no time to lose. I will contact the Demon King and the others as soon as possible." Hoping they can lend a hand in this critical moment, Thor and El breathed a sigh of relief. This was exactly the purpose of their trip. As long as the Chinese gods were willing to intervene, Thanos' threat wouldn't be a formidable threat. However, Lin Feng frowned. The appearance of the Chinese gods undoubtedly bolstered national pride, but it also exposed a problem. When faced with external threats, people's first instinct wasn't to rely on their own strength, but to hope in the gods for help. While this was logically sound, if humanity always relied on the gods, what would be the point of existence? Not to mention the nearly unstoppable global influx of people heading to China after the Hela threat was resolved. If Lin Feng hadn't instructed Chen Haitian to notify the official media, China would have been overwhelmed by the constant stream of people from around the world. However, Lin Feng knew that his role as one of the Chinese gods was only temporary, and he couldn't let his presence diminish people's vigilance. Being prepared for danger in times of peace is the key to the long-term survival and development of civilization. Lin Feng didn't plan to stay on Blue Star for long, he longed to travel the universe. Therefore, he subdued Ultron. After all, Ultron's artificial intelligence could continuously evolve, allowing it to continuously escalate in the face of endless external threats. Compared to Lin Feng, who could leave at any moment, Ultron was the most reliable defense. But Ultron was also an external force. What truly protected humanity was humanity's resolve. Without the resolve to persevere to the end, humanity would be nothing but spineless, vulnerable to enslavement at any moment. This tendency must be curbed. Having made up his mind, Lin Feng lost no time and immediately set out for the fairy island. After all, nominally, deities like Dijun and Ji Yin Dao Ren resided on the fairy island. A colorful cloud floated before Lin Feng, and Dijun's voice echoed, "Fellow Taoist, what do you want from me?" Since Lin Feng was still considered an ordinary person, it would be awkward for him to use his divine power to travel to the fairy island on his own. So, he found an excuse through Dijun's clone. Lin Feng's face showed worry. "Your Excellency the Demon King, I have urgent business. I hope to see you as soon as possible." "Okay, step onto the cloud, it will bring you there." Dijun's voice was undeniable and commanding. Without hesitation, Lin Feng stepped onto the clouds and flew to the fairy island, pondering how to reduce humanity's over-reliance on the gods. Preparedness is the key to success. Lack of preparation leads to failure. He had already planned to deploy nuclear reactors around the world. Under Ultron's control, these reactors could generate an energy shield to protect the Earth at any time, but their uses far exceeded that. Lin Feng lingered on the fairy island for a moment, confirming his ideas. Then, a clone emerged, assuming the form of Dijun, and walked out alongside his original form. "Professor Lin Feng, you're finally here. I've been waiting for you for a long time." Chen Haitian felt relieved upon seeing Lin Feng appear. Then, he noticed Dijun standing beside Lin Feng. Even without the golden aura surrounding him, Dijun's aura was unmatched by any mortal. Chapter 19 Lin Feng spoke, and the whole audience was shocked. Chapter 19, Lin Feng speaks, shocking the audience. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 19, Lin Feng speaks, shocking the audience. That makes sense. If some Wukong lived in this interregnum, then the lack of historical records makes sense. Everyone pondered this. Professor Feng Min was pleased with the audience's reaction. He added, "The era in which Sun Wukong lived must have been a magical and remarkable one. It was able to produce a figure like Sun Wukong." Everyone understood the meaning and became excited. "Yes. This era is truly amazing." "It's not amazing, it's incredible." "Yes, it truly is incredible. I'm curious about what that era was like." "Ha ha ha, I'm curious too. And I also think, if I were born in that era, wouldn't I be able to become like Sun Wukong?" Discussions arose. Everyone was filled with curiosity about that era, eager to learn more about it. The audience and the live stream were also discussing the matter, equally curious. At this moment, even the foreign media were astonished. Chinese civilization once boasted such a powerful and glorious era. Just this tip of the iceberg is already so astonishing. What hidden weapon does China hold? China is destined to rise. This profound historical heritage is simply unimaginable. But Suzhou paused, then turned to Fang Min and said, Professor Fang, this situation you're describing is unverifiable, right? These are just your guesses, right? Fang Min nodded and said truthfully, yes, that's what I was going to say. Huh? Everyone was disappointed. So it was just your guesses, and I thought they were true. After thinking it over, everyone agreed. If Professor Fang Min's description was true, then that era would also be a blank period in Chinese history, with no relevant records and no way to verify it. The atmosphere in the room darkened slightly. Fang Min, observing this, felt a mix of emotions. He felt a sense of responsibility for his academic work, so he wouldn't say anything unverified. Now he wanted to say something to liven up the atmosphere. But he found himself at a loss for words. Just as he was frantically trying to think of something to say, a young man suddenly stood up and said, while Professor Fang's claims are unverifiable, they're certainly true. Fang Min was startled by these words, then realized, wasn't this the young man I'd previously found odd? But why was he saying that? The entire audience also noticed Lin Feng, their collective curiosity piqued. Who is this guy? I don't know, fuck. What did I just hear? He's actually saying Professor Fang is right? He's confirming what he said. But Professor Fang himself isn't sure. Could he be even more knowledgeable than Professor Fang? How is that possible? Good boy, he's probably trying to show off, shh. It's possible. After all, this is a live broadcast, huh? That's outrageous. Don't you even know where we are? That's right. Get him out, the audience erupted in discussion. Some were confused, some thought Lin Feng was just trying to impress, and some were furious, threatening to kick him out. Suzhou also looked at Lin Feng. His brow furrowed slightly, believing Lin Feng was seeking attention by standing up, rashly affirming something that even Professor Fang himself wasn't sure about. Suzhou thought for a moment, and since he was seeking attention, he might as well give him the benefit of the doubt. Suzhou asked, student, why are you so sure of Professor Fang's words? Professor Fang himself isn't sure about this. With that, everyone's attention fell on Lin Feng again. Tang Yiming only then realized what was happening. Lin Feng's sudden rise had stunned him. Recovering from his shock, he thought to himself, oh no. This kid's boasting is so outrageous that he's convinced himself. With that thought in mind, Tang Yiming stealthily tugged at Lin Feng's shirt, signaling him to sit down. This was no joke. If he wasn't careful, he'd end up in a bad light. But Lin Feng paid no attention to Tang Yiming's tugging. He hadn't wanted to say anything, but seeing his shock level rising so quickly, he decided to add fuel to the fire and push the matter forward. He looked at Suzhou and said, first, let me answer your second question. You're asking where Flower Fruit Mountain is, right? Lin Feng paused and said, after returning from his sea voyage to seek immortality, Sun Wukong went to the Dragon Palace in the East China Sea to seek suitable weapons. The Dragon Palace in the East China Sea is, of course, in the East China Sea. Therefore, it follows that Flower Fruit Mountain is an island in the East China Sea. However, with the passage of time, Flower Fruit Mountain may have long since sunk to the bottom of the sea, which is why there are no historical records of this place. Everyone was stunned by this. On closer inspection, it made some sense. Suzhou pondered, agreeing that there was some truth to it. Fang Min's eyes lit up with a smile when he heard this answer. He asked, then how can you be so sure I'm right? This statement piqued everyone's curiosity. Even Tang Yiming was momentarily stunned and stopped trying to pull Lin Feng. Haha, Lin Feng chuckled. Any era that existed will leave behind relevant records, no matter how long it's passed. However, Sun Wukong's era didn't, which is inherently impossible. But if this were a magical era, then do you still think it's impossible? As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's hearts trembled, as if they had been enlightened. It was indeed true. If this were a magical era, then erasing all traces would be a piece of cake. Suzhou was also surprised. So was Fang Minimum. He looked at Lin Feng with a smile. Lin Feng had solved two of his problems and helped him regain his composure. Fang Min smiled and asked, student, what else do you know? Can you share it? Everyone was immediately surprised. What the hell? Professor Feng's question was like asking for advice. Lin Feng smiled and said, I think we can classify Sun Wukong's era as the ancient era. And since it's an era, it's impossible that there was only one powerful figure like Sun Wukong. Hiss. Fang Min gasped in realization, then quickly asked, you mean there are many figures like Sun Wukong? Yes, Lin Feng nodded. Fang Min was shocked, but after thinking about it, she could understand. After all, it was impossible for such an era to produce only one powerful figure, Sun Wukong. The audience was also shocked when they heard this, unable to believe their ears. Lin Feng continued, that ancient era must have undergone a major change, causing it to disappear. However, figures as powerful as Sun Wukong, with their long lifespans, must have fallen into a dormant state. Therefore, they have not appeared in Chinese history. And I think Sun Wukong's awakening now is probably related to the recent extraordinary events. Perhaps in the future, one ancient figure after another will awaken. Lin Feng made up this lie, setting the stage for the appearance of the mythical characters later. But the audience in the venue and the viewers in the live broadcast room were unaware of this, so they were all shocked when they heard this. Chapter 20 The principal invites Lin Feng to be a visiting professor. Chapter 20 The principal invites Lin Feng to become a visiting professor. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 20 The principal invites Lin Feng to become a visiting professor. Were there so many powerful people in that era? I suppose there were. After all, it's impossible for just one Sun Wukong to be born. That makes sense, but what happened in that era? Why did it disappear? I don't know. But I really want to know what it was like back then. It must have been shocking. Lin Feng's words sparked deep thought and discussion among everyone. However, while pondering, some also became curious about Lin Feng. Who is this person? Why did he know so much? It felt like he knew even more than Professor Fang Min. Suzhou pondered Lin Feng's words as well. Professor Fang Min, standing at the podium, looked at Lin Feng with a beaming smile. He felt that this young man seemed to know more than he did, and must have learned it from other sources. Professor Fang Min wasn't the only one with this thought. Principal Zhao Songgang, standing in the background, also watched Lin Feng with excitement, and even had an idea. The lecture concluded to a round of enthusiastic applause. Everyone learned about the origins of Sun Wukong and the magical era that existed in ancient China. However, the only regret was that we didn't know much about that era, and even less about Sun Wukong himself, which made it less than satisfying. The full video of the lecture has become a trending topic online, with netizens buzzing with discussion. Holy crap! There's actually an era like this in Chinese history. Awesome! Ha ha ha! I knew our history was extraordinary. Oh my god! Who is this guy? Why does he know so much? Didn't Professor Fang Min say that was a blank period in Chinese history? Yes. Incredible. What are you thinking? Do you think he's from that era? Ha ha ha! How is that even possible? So, we have our own superheroes? So, who's more powerful, Sun Wukong or Iron Man? The above person is talking nonsense. How can Iron Man be compared to Sun Wukong? That's right. Don't they use their brains when they speak? Holy crap. What a shame. Such a shame. If that era hadn't disappeared, wouldn't we also be able to cultivate and learn the Dao and become figures like Sun Wukong? You just discovered this? I'm so jealous. Online discussions raged. Wukong University. Lin Feng and Tang Yiming followed the crowd out of the auditorium. Many media reporters had wanted to stop Lin Feng for an interview. However, there were so many people, and Lin Feng and Tang Yiming slipped into the crowd, eluding them and failing to be noticed. Therefore, they were not interviewed. As Lin Feng and Tang Yiming walked along, many people pointed and murmured to their companions, their faces filled with surprise. Tang Yiming, observing the surroundings, suddenly felt a surge of envy at Lin Feng's popularity. He lowered his voice and asked quietly, Brother Feng, tell me the truth. Did you make up what you said in the lecture? No, Lin Feng said. He paused for a moment. He knew Lin Feng couldn't have made it up, since Professor Fang Min had approved of it. But he found it hard to believe. He knew Lin Feng's level, so how could he know all this? Could he have been secretly taking extra classes? But that's too intense, isn't it? Tang Yiming was puzzled. Just then, a voice called out from behind, Classmate, wait a minute. Hearing this, Lin Feng and Tang Yiming turned to see Wukong University President Zhao Songgang and Professor Fang Min trotting over. They both froze for a moment, unsure what was going on. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min trotted over to Lin Feng, excited smiles on their faces, as if they discovered a treasure. Tang Yiming seemed a little reserved and nervous around them. Lin Feng, on the other hand, appeared composed and at ease. He asked, "What can I do for you?" Zhao Songyang's question only piqued his interest. Most people would be nervous and at a loss when they saw them, just like the slightly overweight classmate next to him, who looked away, wanting to look at him but unable to. This classmate, however, was composed and calm, even asking questions. That's the reaction of someone with real knowledge, Zhao Songyang pondered, and asked, "Classmate, what's your name? Are you a student at Wukong University?" Lin Feng, "Not from your school, and I've already graduated and am no longer studying," Lin Feng answered truthfully. "Oh," Zhao Songyang nodded, then added, "I wonder if you're free? How about we find a place to sit down and chat?" "Chat?" Lin Feng was taken aback, not knowing what he meant. But after thinking about it, he nodded. Okay, he wanted to know what the other party wanted to talk to him about. "Okay, please come this way. We'd better avoid those reporters," Zhao Songyang smiled. He knew that if the reporters saw them, they would swarm around them and they wouldn't be able to leave. Lin Feng nodded, then said to Tang Yiming, "Fatty, you go back first. I'll go sit with them." Tang Yiming nodded stiffly, and at the same time, he envied Lin Feng even more. What an honor it was to be invited to chat by the president of Wukong University and Professor Fang Min, a master of history. The president's office. "Come, Professor Lin, have some tea." Zhao Songyang brewed a cup of tea and placed it in front of Lin Feng. Hearing the title, Lin Feng asked in surprise, "Professor Lin?" "Haha." Zhao Songyang smiled, sat down, and said, "Professor Lin knows more about Sun Wukong than we do, and he's even deduced the situation of that era. So, it's only right that I call you Professor. Besides, age isn't a factor in academia." Hearing this, Lin Feng stopped caring about the title. Zhao Songyang asked, "How did you get into history? Or did you study it in college?" "I studied it in college, and I've continued to study it since graduation. I can say I'm a history enthusiast," Lin Feng said truthfully. "I see." Zhao Songyang smiled broadly. Lin Feng felt that Zhao Songyang's conversation was full of meaningless questions, so he got straight to the point. "I wonder what you wanted to talk to me about, President." Zhao Songyang and Fang Min exchanged glances, and both smiled. Zhao Songyang extended a sincere invitation to Lin Feng, saying, "What Professor Lin said in his lecture is enough to show that he understands the era of Sun Wukong better than we do. Therefore, we would like to invite you to be a visiting professor at Wukong University to continue your research on that era and Sun Wukong." Lin Feng frowned when he heard this. He had not expected that the other party would come to him to discuss such a matter. "But this is not a good idea. I don't have a master's or doctoral degree. Besides, this is Wukong University." Chapter 21 Lin Feng decided to use the Tathagata role-playing card. Chapter 21 Lin Feng decided to use the Tathagata role-playing card. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 21 Lin Feng decided to use the Tathagata role-playing card. Upon hearing this, Zhao Songyang and Fang Min immediately understood what Lin Feng meant and hurriedly advised, "Professor Lin, you're being too modest." "Indeed," Fang Min said, "the history of that blank period is impossible to verify today, yet you were able to infer those events. That speaks volumes about your strengths." Fang Min paused, then added, "Furthermore, I believe you understand how crucial that blank period is to our modern society. Shouldn't such a miraculous era be showcased to the world? Shouldn't foreigners be able to see the profound depths of our Chinese history?" Zhao Songyang replied, "Indeed. And academic qualifications are only one criterion. If your knowledge remains untold, it would be a loss to all of humanity." Zhao Songyang's words were sincere. He truly didn't want to miss out on such a talented young man with an unexpected understanding of ancient civilization. Lin Feng looked at Zhao Songyang and Fang Min, who were almost pleading with him. He knew what they were thinking. He knew all about myths and legends. But for them, it was a mysterious and magical era they had never encountered before. Their reaction wasn't surprising. Lin Feng pondered. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min, seeing Lin Feng considering it, were delighted and fell silent, asking him to think it over. Agreeing to their request isn't a bad idea. And who knows, it might even be an opportunity to promote myths and legends, Lin Feng pondered. His current goal was to resurrect myths and legends. That way, he could portray a mythical figure, and everyone would know who he was. creating even greater shock value. Besides, publicly appearing as a professor while secretly assuming a heroic identity seems like a good idea, but it would require a relatively secretive environment. Lin Feng pondered for a moment, and ultimately decided to agree. He looked at Zhao Songyang and smiled. Okay, President, then I'll agree. Great. Professor Lin, that's fantastic, Zhao Songyang and Feng Min exclaimed excitedly. Lin Feng added, but I need a completely quiet environment. That's no problem. Everything's easy. I'll arrange it for you right away, Zhao Songyang agreed immediately. A completely peaceful environment was no big deal for the president of Wukong University. Thank you, President, Lin Feng said with a smile. I don't deserve it. We should be the ones thanking you, Zhao Songyang waved his hand and said with a smile, you are able to join Wukong University. With your joining, China's history, which has been hidden in the shadows, will one day see the light of day. Yes, Professor Lin, Feng Min echoed. Both of them were thrilled, tears welling in their eyes. This was no exaggeration for them. The gaps in Chinese history were the profound mystery they had pursued their entire lives. At their age, they no longer needed to fully unravel the truth about that period. Even uncovering just a glimpse would be enough to satisfy them. A few hours later, Lin Feng followed Zhao Songyang to a garden nestled in the mountains. This garden contained residences, rockeries, and flowing water. The style was reminiscent of the ancient gardens of Suzhou, with a touch of modern elements, creating a truly elegant atmosphere. Professor Lin, how is this garden? Zhao Songyang asked Lin Feng. It's in the mountains, so no one comes here. Plus, the path at the foot of the mountain is guarded by security, and outsiders are prohibited from going up. It's absolutely quiet and undisturbed. Not bad, Lin Feng said. Haha, Zhao Songyang smiled. A friend of mine spent a lot of money to build this garden. I told him about your situation, and he immediately let me bring you here to live. I see. Lin Feng looked at the two-story house in front of him, feeling very satisfied. It was much more comfortable than his previous home. Zhao Songyang smiled and said, then I won't bother Professor Lin anymore. I have things to do at school. Are you leaving now? Why don't you come in and sit for a while? No, I'll come back next time I'm free, Zhao Songyang said. If there's anything Professor Lin needs, just call me and I'll arrange for someone to bring it over. Okay, Zhao Songyang left. Lin Feng entered the house, which also had a rather ancient style, grand and calm. Lin Feng wandered from the first floor to the second, then opened the window and looked outside. Outside, he saw a small bridge, flowing water, a bamboo forest, and a rockery. In the distance, verdant mountains and trees, a truly beautiful sight. Lin Feng's face was filled with smiles. Suddenly, he remembered something and said, System, open your personal dashboard and check your shock value increase. Okay, Master. With that, a virtual dashboard appeared before him. Name, Lin Feng. Character cards, Sun Wukong. Level 2 playability, Tathagata Buda. Level 1 playability. Playability points, Sun Wukong 78 points. Note, playability points cannot be transferred between characters. Points earned by a character can only be used for that character. Shock value, 73,908 points. Note, shock value can be used to purchase items in the store, including but not limited to mythical character cards. Ling. Shock value increased by 1. Ling. Shock value increased by 1. Hiss. So much shock value added, Lin Feng was surprised. Before, the shock value was over 20,000, but now it's over 70,000, a full 50,000 shock value increase. Just a few words at the lecture, spreading the word about the myth, actually generated this much shock value. It seems my thinking was correct. The more popular the myth, the more shock value it generates, Lin Feng beamed. Based on the current situation, the Tathagata Buddha character card can be used, Lin Feng said excitedly. Before, no one knew Sun Wukong's origins, so when he appeared as Tathagata Buddha, everyone still didn't know his origins. But now, with him appearing as Tathagata Buddha, everyone will believe his words even more and know that Tathagata Buddha also came from the same era as Sun Wukong. The aftermath of Lin Feng's lecture spread beyond China. With numerous foreign media present at the time, the news had spread throughout the world. The world heard what the young man said and was shocked. In ancient times, there was an island in the East China Sea called Huaguo Mountain. A magical stone on it gave birth to a stone monkey. The stone monkey journeyed out to sea to seek the truth and learn the art of immortality. Without that video and so many witnesses, no one would have believed it. But now, they couldn't help but believe it. Take, for example, Tony Stark of the United States. Tony watched the video, his brow furrowed. Chapter 22 The bald monk appeared out of nowhere. Chapter 22, a bald monk appears out of nowhere. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 22, a bald monk appears out of nowhere. Is this really the history of China's blank period? Could it be that the technology was so advanced during that period that it could have modified human genes to that degree? Tony naturally focused on the technological level. Sun Wukong was transformed by the technology of that era, which is why he possessed such power. How could he know about things like Taoism, immortality, and the immortal palace of immortality? It seems necessary to research, Tony secretly decided. Such advanced technology must be studied, no matter the cost. But just then, the voice of the artificial intelligence butler, Jarvis, rang out. Sir, Mr. Fury is visiting. What was he doing here? Tony was startled, then said, Don't see me. Just say I'm away and I don't know when I'll be back. Tony knew this person had come to see him. Sorry, sir, he's already in, Jarvis said. Tony turned and saw a tall, bald man with a black eye patch on his left eye, dressed in a black trench coat, walk in. It was Nick Fury, nicknamed Chief of the Stewed Eggs. When are you going on a long trip? Nick asked knowingly. Tony didn't answer, instead saying, Do you know that entering someone's home without permission is illegal? Oh, then you can sue me, Nick said bluntly. Tony smiled and turned back to his own work. He was developing the next generation of the Mark armor. Nick looked at the virtual projection in front of Tony, displaying the details of each Mark component, then watched Tony skillfully operate it, his only remaining right eye glancing in admiration. He got down to business. Tony, the world is changing beyond our imagination. We need your help. Would you like to join us? Tony said without hesitation. No, I don't like departmental work. There are too many rules and regulations. Besides, you can't afford me. Tony didn't even turn his head. Nick paused for a moment, then added, China has the superhero Sun Wukong. If you join us, you might be able to meet him. Aren't you interested in him? Tony paused, even stopping his drawing. He pondered for a moment, then turned to Nick and said, I'll think about it. China. Ministry of State Security. Chen Haitian sat in his office, reading the confessions of Thor and the others, a look of doubt on his face. He had originally planned to interrogate Thor and the others before heading to Hong Kong to prepare for the response to the terrorist organization smuggled in from the United States. But the results of the interrogation were beyond his expectations. Standing at his desk, his subordinate observed the director's furrowed brow. After a moment's hesitation, he asked, Director, are these confessions true or false? The subordinate was puzzled. The interrogations of the foreigners they had brought back had yielded baffling confessions. Especially the one named Thor. He actually claimed to be Odin's son. Who was Odin? Isn't that the king of gods in Norse mythology? So this isn't bullshit? But the confessions of the other four people are similar to Thor's. This is a bit outrageous. And they were in separate cells before, so there is no possibility of collusion. Also, what about those steel giants? They are obviously not the product of Earth's technology. Could it be that what they said is true? But how is this possible? Chen Haitian heard his subordinate's questions and did not answer. He was also confused. But reason told him that this was impossible. Knock knock, but at this moment, there was a knock on the door outside. Chen Haitian looked up and said to the door, Come in. As soon as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open, and a subordinate hurried in with a mobile phone in his hand. He said anxiously, Director, please take a look at this video. Chen Haitian was a little confused, not knowing what a video was. He took the phone and started watching. But immediately his eyes widened and he was immersed in it. Our research found that Sun Wukong is actually an ancient Chinese man from a certain era. First of all, Sun Wukong is very powerful, which everyone can see from the video. Secondly, although our Chinese history is very long and there is a lot of history, there is a big historical fault. I believe everyone knows this. What if Sun Wukong is a person from this blank period? I think we can classify the era in which Sun Wukong lived as the ancient times. And since it is an era, it is impossible that there is only a strong man like Sun Wukong. That ancient era must have undergone a major change, which led to its non-existence. However, People as strong as Sun Wukong had a long lifespan and should have fallen into dormant state. That is why they did not appear in Chinese history. And the reason why Sun Wukong woke up now, I think, is probably related to the recent extraordinary events. Maybe later, one ancient figure after another will wake up. Hiss. After watching the video, Chen Haitian took a breath, with a look of shock on his face. When was this video produced? He asked, quickly looking at his subordinate. He knew the video was about Sun Wukong, but why hadn't he seen it before? He'd clearly researched Sun Wukong's history before. Director, this is the lecture Professor Feng Min from the History Department of Wukong University gave while you were interrogating those foreigners. He discovered Sun Wukong's origins, the subordinate exclaimed excitedly. Chen Haitian finally understood. Then, a thought struck him, and he asked, who is this person in the audience? How does he know so much? He was referring to Lin Feng. We're investigating his information, Chen Haitian nodded. He looked back at Lin Feng in the video. Putting aside this person's identity for now, based on what he's saying, doesn't that mean what those foreigners said is true too? Chen Haitian thought to himself. If Taoism, immortal arts, and the art of immortality existed in ancient China, then the existence of things like Odin and Asgard wouldn't seem surprising. Chen Haitian said this, but he was still shocked. His already shattered cognition shattered again. Ding-ling-ling. Ding-ling-ling, but just then, a rapid ring rang out, as if something major had occurred. Chen Haitian picked up the phone and said, "This is Chen Haitian, director." A bald monk suddenly appeared in the department. A panicked voice came from the microphone. Suddenly appeared, Chen Haitian was stunned and asked, "What do you mean?" "It means exactly what it says." Suddenly appearing out of thin air. Hiss, Chen Haitian gasped. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." "Come and see, this monk is so strange." "Okay. I'll be right there," Chen Haitian replied. Although he was surprised, with the example of Sun Wukong before him, his acceptance was much better. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. 198. Chapter 197 It's Your Own Sewing. 198. Chapter 197 It's Your Own Sewing 2024-10-06 Author, Good Monster Chapter 197 It's Your Own Sewing. Of course, intelligent and civilized societies also have a common problem, and that is war. There are many kinds of creatures at this level, from Asgard to humans on Blue Star, and there may be countless other planets and races. I call them intelligent creatures, or acquired creatures. Afterwards, he did not directly explain Dijun and Yang Jian, but called up 3 pictures from the folder, namely Hila, Surtur and Dormammu. Do you still remember these 3 pictures? These are 3 creatures that have invaded the earth before: Hela, the rebel of Asgard and the goddess of death; Surtur, the creator of Ragnarok; and Dormammu, the lord of the dark dimension. Before explaining the gods, I hope you can get to know these 3. Their existence is between acquired creatures and gods. They also have materialized creature carriers, but at the same time they are also exposed to the rules that have existed since the birth of the universe. They are the pinnacle of intelligent life and the starting point of the existence of gods. They are the direction of our human evolution. Then Professor Lin, what do you mean? Hearing this question, Lin Feng smiled kindly. Yes, gods are the 3rd type of creatures I am talking about. They are the rules of innate birth and the absolute existence of this universe. Carriers are nothing more than infinitely renewable resources to them. Even if the flesh is destroyed, they can be recreated. As long as the universe does not perish, they will exist forever. This is God, the 3rd type of creature, the innate creature. After Lin Feng finished the class, he did not stay for long, but turned around and left with a book. He didn't need to stay long, for he had already thoroughly expounded on the differences between gods and humans and charted the course for the future evolution of Blue Planet humanity. The universe is boundless, vast and mysterious, harboring countless dangers. Even Asgard, the overlord of the 9 realms, might not have survived Thanos' ravages. If it weren't for Lin Feng's protection, Blue Planet would have been reduced to ash long ago. The universe is rife with dangers, and humanity is vulnerable. After Thanos, countless crises will continue to emerge, threatening Blue Planet. Blue Planet cannot always rely on Lin Feng's protection, just as flowers in a greenhouse are too delicate to thrive without weathering the elements. As far as he could remember, Earth would face numerous more major crises after Thanos' death. If humanity didn't catch up, it would sooner or later be annihilated by the universe. After his lecture, Lin Feng declined to grant interviews to any news media. These media outlets had come without prior arrangement, and Lin Feng cared little about how they reported on his relationship with the gods. No matter how public opinion shaped him, it could not change the fact that he was the spokesperson for the gods. Back at his residence, Lin Feng had just taken a sip of coffee when he heard a knock on the door. He looked outside and saw a strange face standing there. Lin Feng was slightly surprised, expecting someone he knew to be visiting, but it turned out to be a complete stranger. "Come in," Lin Feng said. A spirited old professor entered. Looking at Lin Feng, who seemed a little puzzled, he introduced himself. "Hello, Professor Lin. My name is Hank Pym, you can call me Dr. Pym. I'm from the United States, and I have something I'd like to discuss with you." Lin Feng brought a chair for Hank Pym. "Hello, Dr. Pym, please state your purpose." Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, dedicated his life to the study of Pym particles, achieving the compression technology that allowed Ant-Man to be enlarged or reduced in size, and making significant contributions to physics and biology. Lin Feng had great respect for the seemingly stubborn but spirited old man. He had fought countless times to prevent the Cold War, while resolutely preventing Pym particles from falling into the wrong hands. Such a person deserves his respect. After Hank Pym sat down, he directly put forward his point of view. "Professor Lin, you think that gods do not belong to our dimension, or do not belong to our universe, right?" Lin Feng frowned, but still patiently explained, "Dr. Pym, my original words were that gods are a third type of creature different from humans. They are the manifestation of rules." "I don't quite understand your statement." Hank Pym was not in a hurry. He continued Lin Feng's words, "Professor Lin, I watched your entire morning class. I agree with what you said. Tardigrades can be understood as first-type creatures. They exist in the quantum universe. We humans, and the creatures of Asgard, can be understood as second-type creatures in the three-dimensional space universe. Going further up, such as the demon Emperor Djinn, they are third-type creatures, existences higher than the three-dimensional space universe. It can even be said that they can create three-dimensional space. Am I understanding this correctly?" After listening to Hank Pym's statement, Lin Feng's eyes lit up. He didn't know much about space physics, but Hank Pym's explanation was easy to understand. He nodded in agreement and added, "In China, there's a saying that one day in heaven is 1 year on earth. Perhaps, as you say, this discrepancy arises because the gods inhabit a different space-time than we do. Each type of being inhabits a different universe, corresponding to different rules of space-time." Hank Pym seemed delighted, not only because Lin Feng understood and accepted his perspective, but also because Lin Feng's presence seemed to offer a new perspective on a difficult problem he had been trying to solve for years. He asked, "Professor Lin, how do you think we can travel to the universe inhabited by another type of being? Whether it's to the higher realm of the gods or to the lower level of quantum space, how do you think we can get there?" Lin Feng smiled. "Dr. Pym, this isn't an easy problem to solve. The simplest and most effective way is for us to evolve or degenerate to the biological standards of that universe, thus meeting the most basic entry requirements." Hank Pym was slightly disappointed. He had assumed Lin Feng was just a boastful philosopher. However, Lin Feng continued, "Considering our current level of humanity, I believe a more reliable approach is to understand the laws of this universe, use energy to create a stable channel, and take protective measures to reach another universe where living beings reside. What do you think, Dr. Pym?" Hank Pym, as if meeting a kindred spirit, tightly grasped Lin Feng's hand. "Professor Lin, what you've said resonates very well with me." "Thank you, Professor Lin. You've strengthened my resolve," Lin Feng quickly said. "You're welcome." A faint smile played on Lin Feng's lips as he watched Hank Pym depart. He hadn't expected Hank Pym to offer a different explanation for the gods, but it certainly made sense. After seeing Hank Pym off, Chen Haitian re-entered Lin Feng's office, which left Lin Feng somewhat frustrated, but he politely invited him in. Lin Feng wasn't displeased by Hank Pym's visit from the United States. Instead, he engaged him in a cordial and friendly exchange, which surprised Chen Haitian. He looked at Lin Feng, who was sitting on the sofa listening to music, and asked, "Professor Lin, don't you dislike the United States?" Lin Feng smiled easily and explained, "Chen Haitian, This question actually doesn't need to be asked. Although I have reservations about the United States, it doesn't mean that I hate all Americans. People like Dr. Hank Pym and Tony Stark are willing to work for peace on Blue Planet. They have transcended the conflicts and inherent prejudices between countries. I have great respect for such people. Just like the Sakura country, although I have my opinions on the Sakura country, the Sakura country also has anti-war activists who are willing to acknowledge war crimes and make efforts to redeem themselves. These are not contradictory. Chen Haitian breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. That's good. As long as you think so, Professor, I'm relieved. Lin Feng smiled and asked, are you worried that my prejudice will affect my subjective judgment and thus affect the country's development strategy? Chen Haitian nodded solemnly. Yes, Professor Lin. You are the only contact with the gods. Your attitude does, to some extent, affect the country's development strategy. You can remain fair and objective, which is what we are most happy to see. Lin Feng smiled. Tell me, what's the matter with you coming to see me this time? You never come to me for nothing. Chen Haitian smiled as well. Professor Lin, you really understand me. Actually, I came to see you this time because you might not have much time to rest soon. Lin Feng's face was calm. What's the matter? Chen Haitian produced a document. This is from the National Archaeological Team. Thanks to the appearance of gods, our historical research on China can be pushed back further. The historical civilization before the Xia dynasty can also be confirmed and is no longer groundless. However, we are still lacking unearthed artifacts. You are an authority in the field of gods, and they hope you can provide some supporting evidence. Do you have time? Lin Feng raised a brow. Of course I am happy to serve my country. It seems that this work will be quite demanding. No wonder you said that I will have little free time later. Chen Haitian took the coffee that Lin Feng offered and asked curiously, Professor Lin, I have always been curious about your attitude towards gods. I wonder if you would be willing to share it with me. Lin Feng maintained a calm and composed smile. Although I cannot reach them, my heart yearns for them. That's my attitude, Chen Haitian asked jokingly. Aren't you afraid of the gods' reprimand? Lin Feng shook his head. The gods are the way of heaven, unaffected by individual will. No one's opinion can influence the gods. Besides, I'm not blaspheming. The gods' protection of humanity is like the love a parent gives their child. Think about it, what parent doesn't want their child to become powerful? Chen Haitian fell into deep thought. Lin Feng's words suddenly enlightened him and pointed him in the right direction. Lin Feng's words essentially represented the gods' attitude. The gods wanted humanity to become powerful, which is why Lin Feng said, though I cannot reach it, my heart yearns for it. People yearn to possess divine power, and they can strive towards it, but can they truly reach that level? Recovering from his reverie, he couldn't help but ask, Professor Lin, do you think we can achieve that? Lin Feng smiled and replied crisply, of course. Chen Haitian's eyes lit up. Lin Feng's words gave him hope. Since he said so, he must be absolutely confident. However, Chen Haitian was still unsure about how to do it, and whether there were any precedents. As if sensing Chen Haitian's confusion, Lin Feng stood up, looked at him, and said, Don't forget, we call ourselves descendants of Yan and Wang. Chen Haitian was startled. Lin Feng's voice seemed to have traveled through time and space, yet it seemed close at hand, filled with mysterious magic. During the Yellow Emperor's time, there was a great battle with Qi Yu. Qi Yu's subordinates were assisted by Feng Bo and Yu Shi, who used human power to summon wind and rain, drive thunder and lightning. The Yellow Emperor built a chariot pointing the south, and asked the Queen Mother of the Nine Heavens and Yinglong to dispel the fog. This record has already made it clear that humans can master the rules, and humans have potential. Mortal bodies can also be on par with gods. Chen Haitian, do you want to possess this power? Chen Haitian answered subconsciously, yes. Then he suddenly woke up and looked at Lin Feng in a bewildered manner. Lin Feng seemed oblivious to his embarrassment. If you want it, you have to work hard for it. Nothing comes easy. If you want to be on par with the gods, you have to put in the corresponding effort. Otherwise, wouldn't everyone just be daydreaming and waiting for random chance to become a god? Zhang Sanfeng, Chen Tuan, Wei Boyang, and others all achieved ascension through centuries of arduous training. Even the emergence of high-level warriors like Hela in Asgard was the result of countless years of evolution. Do you understand what I mean? Chen Haitian nodded in understanding. Lin Feng's words helped him understand the gods' expectations of humanity and the principle that humans should evolve through their own efforts. Lin Feng smiled with relief. Go ahead if you understand. I'm going to get to work. After Chen Haitian left, lost in thought, Lin Feng gazed at his back, a smile on his lips, but he remained silent. He didn't need to work, all the knowledge of the gods was deeply engraved in his mind. This time, he was simply looking for an excuse to let Chen Haitian return to convey his wishes, so as not to disturb his precious tranquility. In the days that followed, Lin Feng, following the clues provided by Chen Haitian, personally visited the scientific expedition team and explained in detail the historical origins of the gods, firmly tracing Chinese civilization back to before the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors. He also displayed some precious historical artifacts. He could create and retrieve objects left by the gods with ease. A single command from the gods would unleash everything. This was the power of the gods, so immense it transcended logic, for the power of the gods was on a completely different level from that of humans. The appearance of the gods engendered an unprecedented sense of solidarity among the Chinese people. Not only did historians begin in-depth research on Chinese civilization, but all sectors of society also joined in promoting the gods. Film, television, and mainstream media outlets alike produced a series of works featuring the gods. Costume dramas experienced a resurgence, and documentaries exploring the mysteries of the gods became a popular trend. Foreign countries were also abuzz with the exploration of the Chinese gods, with many learning Chinese on their own and exploring the mysterious Eastern land through the internet. In the fashion world, Hanfu became a trendsetter, sending prices of various traditional Chinese clothing soaring. Meanwhile, many leading clothing manufacturers began exporting their products, further driving changes in global fashion trends and aesthetics. Chapter 23, Buda lifts the ban for Thor. Chapter 23 Tathagata Buda lifts the ban for Thor, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 23 Tathagata Buda lifts the ban for Thor. Several guards stared at the bald monk in front of them with vigilance and nervousness. This monk just appeared out of thin air. Moreover, he sat cross-legged, and there was actually a lotus platform under him. In addition, after he appeared, lotus flowers grew all around him. You know, this is reinforced concrete. This situation has never been seen or heard of before. Therefore, several people thought of Sun Wukong at the same time. Only such a mysterious figure can do this, right? Thinking of this, no one acted rashly. And this monk, with a kind face, did not make any other moves. He was Lin Feng. Lin Feng played the role of Tathagata Buddha and teleported here directly from his home. And the purpose of his coming here was that with Thor here, it would be easier to show his power. Otherwise, where would he go to show his power? At this moment, Lin Feng's mind was clear. Ever since impersonating the Tathagata Buddha, he felt he had reached a state of selflessness and emptiness, a state of total comfort. Simultaneously, he felt a profound sense of power, a sense of complete understanding of everything. As expected of a Tathagata Buddha role-playing card, even with the same level of role-playing privilege, it's so much more powerful than Sun Wukong's. It's simply not on the same level, Lin Feng thought to himself. Meanwhile, monks in temples across the nation sensed a powerful presence. This aura filled them with yearning and excitement, yet they couldn't articulate the cause. What's going on? I don't know, it seems something has appeared in that direction, but why is it so compelling? You have the same feeling. The monks discussed the situation, baffled. While this world's China experienced a historical hiatus, resulting in the absence of mythology, temples and Taoist temples still existed. However, they didn't enshrine the Tathagata Buddha, the 3 pure ones, or the Jade Emperor. Instead, they worshipped other, unknown entities. However, they were all inanimate objects. To put it bluntly, it could be interpreted as a blind offering. Suddenly, with a loud bang, the unknown object they were offering shattered to the ground. Seeing this, the monks were horrified. The statue is broken. How could this happen? Why would it break out of nowhere? This shouldn't happen. This statue hasn't been like this in all these years. The chatter intensified, all filled with surprise and confusion. Ministry of State Security. Chen Haitian hurried over and was stunned by the scene before him. He saw a bald monk sitting cross-legged on a lotus pedestal. Lotuses grew from the surrounding ground, and a faint golden glow lingered above the lotuses. The scene was incredibly strange. Chen Haitian came to his senses. He didn't know why, but he felt the urge to kneel before this monk. He shook his head, forcing himself to stop thinking about it, otherwise he would actually kneel down. And for him, the director of the Ministry of State Security, kneeling down would be embarrassing. He asked, "Excuse me, who are you?" Although he didn't kneel, he couldn't help but use honorifics. "Amitabha," Lin Feng chanted, "I am the Buddha of Lingshan. My Dharma name, Tathagata Buddha, Tathagata." "Buddha?" Chen Haitian frowned slightly upon hearing this, and couldn't help but think of Sun Wukong. But suddenly, his mind was struck, and he wondered, could it be that he is from the same era as Sun Wukong? And has he awakened now? Chen Haitian took a breath. Judging from the current situation, this was very possible. So, it seems that what that person said is true. In that era, there were many people like Sun Wukong. Chen Haitian's face was shocked. He had been skeptical before, but now he was completely convinced. But, who is that person? Why does he know all this? Chen Haitian's curiosity returned. At this moment, the Tathagata Buddha before him spoke. "The stars shift, the sun and the moon alternate. I never thought that after so long, humanity has embarked on a different path, no longer seeking immortality. However, perhaps it's related to the changes in the world in our slumber." Chen Haitian's heart trembled at these words. He seemed to understand the meaning, but he wasn't sure. He hesitated, then asked respectfully, "Excuse me, what do you mean by that?" "I can't tell you now. You will know in the future," Lin Feng said with a kind smile. His voice was gentle, revealing a sense of tranquility and peace. Hearing these words, Chen Haitian, despite being filled with curiosity and doubts, had no desire to ask. In fact, he felt a sense of peace and tranquility within him. And this was a peace he had never felt since he was born. It was as if, at this moment, even if Mount Tai collapsed before him, he could remain calm. Just then, Lin Feng looked up at the building and said, "There are several different auras there." Chen Haitian was curious, unsure of what he meant. But the next second, the Tathagata Buddha before him changed his hand gestures, and suddenly, Thor and his 5 companions appeared in the air before him. And they remained motionless, as if imprisoned. "Hiss!" Chen Haitian gasped, his eyes widening. He had never expected the other party to bring Thor and his 5 companions out. Moreover, this method was exactly the same as that used by Sun Wukong. No matter how many times he witnessed it, it was still shocking. But the most shocking were Thor and his companions. They were the ones involved. They were imprisoned separately at the time. But suddenly, they felt a strange power enveloping them. Then, in a flash, they appeared here, imprisoned, suspended in midair, unable to move. What's going on? Is the king here? The 5 of them were terrified. But when they saw Lin Feng, they immediately knew it was Lin Feng's doing. After all, Lin Feng was the most extraordinary and special person present. Thor, with his temper, was already furious at being treated like this. But facing Lin Feng, he didn't feel that way. On the contrary, he felt honored. This reaction even struck him as odd. Lin Feng looked at Thor and the other 4, effortlessly held in midair by him, a smile playing on his face. He said, "There's something strange about the auras you 5 carry. Fortunately, it's not demonic, but rather holy energy." Hearing this, Thor and the others felt a sense of relief. Lin Feng's gaze fell on Thor again, saying, "However, there's still a restriction on you. While it won't kill you, it does restrict your power. Well, our encounter proves your connection to the Buddha. I will remove this restriction for you, forging a bond. Perhaps we'll meet again someday." With that, Lin Feng raised his hand toward Thor and gently tapped the air. With that gentle tap, everyone heard a buzzing sound. Immediately afterwards, a golden light emanated from Thor. Strangely, although this light was bright, it wasn't at all glaring. Instead, a gentle aura emanated from it, permeating everyone's senses. The injuries sustained by Sif and the other 3 healed considerably at this moment. Thor felt the most profoundly, feeling a sense of relief throughout his body. His previous injuries were completely healed. Chapter 24 Odin was shocked. Who on earth freed my son from his bonds? Chapter 24, Odin is shocked. Who has freed my son from his bonds? 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 24, Odin is shocked. Who has freed my son from his bonds? Everyone present was utterly stunned by this scene, unable to recover for a long time. The light vanished. Thor felt the imprisoned divine power reappear, like a blocked river that has been cleared and now flows freely again, divine power flowing through every limb. Thor's expression was filled with shock and disbelief. He knew full well that his divine power had been imprisoned by his father, Odin. This imprisonment stemmed from his bloodline, from the constraints imposed by the king of Asgard on his subjects. Yet, this other party had broken it so effortlessly. How could this be possible? Without a thorough understanding of the source of Asgard's divine power, this would have been impossible. But this other party wasn't even an Asgardian, so how could he possibly understand divine power? Thor simply couldn't believe it. Yet, it just happened. Who is this person? Why does he possess such immense power? Is he in league with that son Wukong? Thor stared at the strange figure before him, his mind awash with confusion. The complexity was that his father had imprisoned his divine power, and he had been freed without his father's permission. The confusion was that he didn't know the other person's identity, and why was he so powerful? This was simply beyond imagination. Thor pondered for a moment, thinking, this person is even more powerful than that son Wukong. Back then, when Lin Feng had eliminated 18 destroyers and was communicating with Chen Haitian, Thor had heard Lin Feng's name. And now, Thor's thoughts were purely based on intuition. After releasing the imprisonment, Lin Feng waved his hand, and Thor and the other four vanished into thin air. When they reappeared, they had returned to their temporary holding cells. Thor and the other three were even more shocked. This application of spatial magic was simply terrifying. No incantation needed, just a wave of the hand to make it appear, a wave to make it disappear. Who is he, anyway? How could such a lowly planet like Earth have so many powerful figures? Thor was puzzled. Crucially, Heimdall had never mentioned this situation. This meant he hadn't discovered it either. Thor didn't know about the online news, so he had no idea what was going on. Meanwhile, in Asgard, Odin sat on his throne, his expression downcast. The surroundings were dim, devoid of light. This dimness, cast upon him, made him seem gloomy, like an old hero. Odin clutched his scepter, silent. He had held this position for a long time. His eldest son, immature, impulsive, and arrogant, had nearly died in Jotunheim at the hands of the frost giants, nearly sparking a war between Jotunheim and Asgard. His second son was cunning and scheming, willing to do anything to secure the throne, even attempting to kill his brother Thor and launch a war against Jotunheim to completely exterminate the frost giants. And now, fearing punishment, he leaped through a dimensional rift, disappearing for a moment. Even Heimdall couldn't find him, and it was unknown whether he was alive or dead. Worrying about his two sons made Odin seem to age dramatically in a short period of time. Odin sighed wearily and grasped his scepter. But at that moment, something struck him, and his expression suddenly changed. He abruptly stood up, gazing at the starry sky. He felt a powerful force descending upon him. It frightened even him. What's this force? Are the creatures from the dark dimension appearing again? Odin's face was filled with alarm. But after sensing it, he realized it wasn't. This force wasn't evil or violent, but rather neutral and peaceful. And it lasted less than 30 seconds before disappearing. Odin was filled with confusion and bewilderment. But then, he suddenly realized that Thor's restraints had been released. What's going on? Could it be related to the mysterious force just now? Odin speculated. It wasn't surprising that he'd thought of this. After that power appeared, he sensed the imprisonment on his son had been lifted. With that thought, he called out, Heimdall, what happened to Earth? Heimdall guarded the Rainbow Bridge. His eyes could see anywhere in the 9 realms. But in the past, his calls to Heimdall always received an immediate response, but this time, no reply came. Odin frowned. Heimdall, this time, Heimdall finally replied, but his voice was trembling. My king, I can no longer see Earth. It has vanished from my sight. Upon hearing this, Odin's face froze. What did you say? You can't see Earth. Odin couldn't believe it. How could such a thing be possible? But then, he suddenly thought of that mysterious and powerful force. Could it be that they have obscured Earth, preventing Heimdall from seeing? Odin exclaimed in surprise. Thinking carefully, it seemed very possible. They had helped Thor break free from his imprisonment on Earth, and then brought their power to Asgard. For such a powerful being to obscure the Earth, preventing Heimdall from seeing, would be a piece of cake. Moreover, only such a being could accomplish this. Thinking of this, Odin became uneasy and quickly ordered, Heimdall, stop spying on Earth. The powerful being's actions clearly indicated his unwillingness to allow anyone to spy on Earth. Forcing such an attack would likely displease him. Go to Earth and bring Thor back when you have the chance, Odin ordered. Yes, Heimdall replied. Odin pondered again, wondering who the other person was. The mysterious and powerful force Odin had sensed was a complete miscalculation. It was merely the surge of power caused by Lin Feng's release of Thor's restraints. However, this did increase Lin Feng's shock level. After all, Odin was no ordinary person, and the shock he felt was far greater than that of an ordinary person. Chen Haitian was astonished at Lin Feng's ability to manipulate Thor and the other four with such ease. This power was truly incredible. But he just said that Thor and the others have a different aura, which means they're truly not from Earth. Chen Haitian was now completely convinced of Thor's story about his origins. Furthermore, regarding what the man had said at the lecture. After Lin Feng finished this, he saw his shock level rising, and he felt excited. He then looked at Chen Haitian and said, I came here solely to see the world. Now that I've seen the world, it's time for me to return. However, Earth will soon face an alien invasion, but don't panic. This is China, the birthplace of humanity. Humanity is destined to be ours, and we have our own ways to overcome it. However, as a monk, I, with compassion, will not ignore this situation. I will give you a gift. If you encounter danger, show it to us, and it will protect the world and bring peace. With that, Lin Feng raised his hand and gently pointed at Chen Haitian. A golden light flew out, transforming into a sutra that appeared before Chen Haitian. Chen Haitian quickly caught it and looked up. The Tathagata Buddha was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished, as if he had never appeared. However, the lotus flower growing on the ground marked the scene that had just occurred. 199. Chapter 198 The Power of the Chinese Divine Religion. 199. Chapter 198 The Power of the Chinese Divine Religion 2024-1007 Author, Good Monster Chapter 198 The Power of the Chinese Divine Religion in the literary world, immortal and demon myths are emerging in an endless stream, and immortal cultivation novels are springing up like mushrooms after rain, far exceeding other types of novels in the same period. The most pragmatic is the scientific community. They are thinking about how to promote human evolution through communication with Lin Feng. Stark is one of the best among them. During this period, he met with Lin Feng frequently to discuss human development issues. Professor Lin, I roughly understand what you mean. Do you think that the further humans evolve, the less dependent they will be on technology? His expression revealed a hint of anxiety. The emergence of gods broke the inherent cognition of mankind and subverted the traditional laws of physics. Will the scientific methods he is proud of be eliminated by history? Lin Feng smiled faintly. Noticing Stark's inner worry, he pondered for a moment before explaining, Stark, you have to understand. Although human evolution will become less and less dependent on technology, for a long time, humanity will still need it. After a moment's thought, he offered another example. Look at Thor's Asgard. Their world also has tools like teleportation arrays. So, before ascending to godhood, humans cannot do without technology. You can rest assured, Stark felt a slight sense of relief. However, Lin Feng didn't stop there. Stark, there's another point to note. While humanity can't do without technology at the moment, we can't over-rely on it, Stark scoffed. Professor Lin Feng's statement seemed somewhat contradictory. Besides, at this stage, aside from the gods, wasn't technology the only thing humanity could rely on the most? Lin Feng noticed his absent-mindedness and spoke earnestly. Stark, do you remember Ultron? Stark was struck by lightning. The memory was still vivid and deeply imprinted in his mind. He had been a prodigy since childhood, naturally versed in science and technology, and his steel armor was a technological achievement he was proud of. But Ultron's evolution slipped beyond his control. Had it not been for the divine intervention that changed Ultron's mind, humanity might have faced untold disaster. This was one of the few major setbacks in his life, causing him to question whether technology could truly benefit humanity. Realizing the gravity of the problem, Stark began to listen carefully to Lin Feng's advice. Lin Feng handed him an Americano, catering to his taste, and said, Technology has indeed brought many benefits to humanity, but it also has many negative consequences. The gods haven't yet addressed problems like white pollution and environmental destruction, even though they could easily do so. This demonstrates their trust in humanity, and also serves as a warning. A trace of bewilderment crossed Stark's face, and he muttered to himself, a warning. Lin Feng looked at him. Yes, it's a warning. The gods can help humanity in the event of an alien invasion, because it's an irresistible force, not humanity's fault. But why should the gods intervene to address Earth's pollution? To put it bluntly, even if Earth were destroyed, the gods would still thrive. Ultimately, humanity must solve its problems on its own. Stark. Have you ever considered what you would do if one day you lost this armor and your loved one was kidnapped? Stark was stunned. The question Lin Feng raised wasn't impossible, but he had previously relied too heavily on his technological prowess, subconsciously ignoring it. Rogers had once questioned what would remain after he removed his armor. He immediately retorted at the time. But now it seems his concerns were not unfounded. Stark deeply agreed with Lin Feng's perspective. Ultimately, one must rely on oneself. He thanked Lin Feng for his advice and decided to temporarily suspend the development of the armor in favor of physical training. Before leaving, Lin Feng felt a flicker of reluctance, but he still told him, "Stark, if you have time, check out the brother and sister in Sokovia. They're called Pete and Wanda Maximoff. The consequences of the evil sowed by humanity will ultimately be borne by the human race." On the streets of Sokovia, Stark used Friday's network capabilities to search for the brother and sister mentioned by Professor Lin Feng. While he didn't understand Lin Feng's intentions, he was convinced they had a deeper meaning. The aftermath of the Ultron incident had left him with a sense of unease about the power of technology. Furthermore, his recent interactions with Lin Feng had left him deeply drawn to Chinese culture, and he had gained a deeper understanding of the philosophy that weapons are ominous instruments, never to be used lightly except in dire situations. Weapons and war were both driven by technological advancement and human greed, and technological advancement often fueled greed. It was for this reason that he transformed Stark Military Industries into an energy company, unable to withstand the heavy toll of weapons. "Boss, I found them," Friday's captivating voice echoed through his earpiece. Following Friday's guidance, Stark journeyed through the vast Eastern European metropolis. Without Friday's assistance, searching for the siblings in this vast sea of people would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Rogers' words echoed in his ears again, "Stark, if you take off this armor, what will remain of you?" Technology had indeed helped him achieve his goals efficiently, and Lin Feng acknowledged humanity's current reliance on it. But Stark couldn't help but wonder, without Friday, how would he have found the siblings so quickly? While he was thinking, he arrived at a brother and sister's residence. He knocked on the door with trepidation. Lin Feng's eyes before he left hinted that this trip was not a simple one. The door opened, and a man looked at him in surprise. "Is that you?" Stark introduced himself. "Hello, Mr. Pete Maximoff. I'm Tony Stark, one of the founders of the Avengers." Pete was even more surprised, but then he sneered, his eyes taunting. "What are you doing here, you executioner? Are you trying to wipe out the whole gang?" Executioner. Stark was puzzled for a moment. He didn't understand why Pete hated him so much, even considering him an executioner. He sensed a misunderstanding, but he didn't know how to explain it. Pete looked at him, said nothing more, and turned back inside. A moment later, he returned, holding a fragment of shrapnel, and stared directly at Stark. "Mr. Executioner, do you remember the butcher knife you designed?" Stark was speechless with shock, sweat dripping down his forehead. This was a missile he had designed himself. Back when Stark's military industry was still under development, he had personally explained its power to the US military. Now, this missile had become a murder weapon, used by the US government to take the lives of people from other countries. This brother and sister were just one of the victims of his weapon, and many more may have died in the dust. Stark left Pete and Wanda's home in a state of despair. He could no longer hear Pete's taunts, but felt every word pierce his heart. "Hello, sir, are you interested in joining our Chinese cult?" An elderly man was handing out flyers on the streets of Sokovia. Stark subconsciously took the flyer, only to see portraits of gods such as Sun Wukong, Yang Jian, Howling Skydog, and Dijun, as well as the vague figure of Tongshan sect master in the corner of the portrait. Stark looked at the old man's typical European face, listened to his authentic Eastern European accent, and asked doubtfully, "Huaxia divine religion?" The old man explained with a smile, "Yes, Huaxia divine religion. The Chinese gods came to the rescue of Blue Star during several crises. In order to express our gratitude to them, we spontaneously organized the Huaxia divine religion. They rescued people without hurting anyone. Although some buildings were damaged, we believe they can be rebuilt. Come on, young man, pay the €500 membership fee and you will be a member of the Huaxia divine religion." Wait a minute, the old man's previous words were reasonable, but the last sentence about the €500 membership fee made him feel suspicious. Stark quickly stopped the old man and asked hurriedly, "Uncle, you are not coerced, are you?" The old man said with disdain, "Young man, what are you talking about? My worship of God comes from the heart. God protects us selflessly, isn't it right for us to respect them? Do you think everyone is like the US government, bombing our homes with missiles, killing our loved ones, and then forcing us to join their system of rules? Stark was shocked again and asked quickly, Uncle, where are your family members? Tears flashed in the old man's eyes. Alice, it's a thing of the past. When the US government bombed Sokovia with missiles, my 2 sons were killed. I still have the fragments of the missile, and there is something like stack written on it. After that, he returned to normal. Young man, are you going to join our Huaxia divine religion? The old man's words made Stark's heart ache, but he still refused. Uncle, I'm sorry, I didn't bring enough money this time. Let's do it next time. After that, he hurried away. The old man was Eastern European and probably not very fluent in English, so the name on the missile fragment was most likely Stark. The old man hurriedly called out from behind, Young man, don't leave. 300 euros is fine, 200, 100 is fine. You don't have to pay now. Stark had already walked away. A month later, Stark stepped into Lin Feng's office again. He looked slightly thinner, his beard scraggly, and his once energetic look was replaced by fatigue and dark circles under his eyes. He gazed at Lin Feng and whispered, Professor Lin, I'm deeply sorry. Watching Stark return, Lin Feng felt a surge of pity. He patted Stark's shoulder and soothed, It's not your fault. Weapons themselves are neither good nor evil, it's the heart of the wielder that matters. You don't need to apologize to me. Instead, you should consider how to compensate those who have been harmed by these weapons, like my brothers and sisters. The US government may not acknowledge its hegemonic actions, but you can take responsibility for your own actions. At the same time, he felt a tinge of sadness. Those who manufacture weapons suffer internally, while those who wield them show no mercy. Perhaps this is the helplessness of the world. It's like a knife attacker making a powerful argument while the knife in his hand silently endures the pain. Isn't that a bit ironic? Stark felt a little relieved at Lin Feng's words of comfort. He realized that providing tangible compensation to the victims might be more meaningful than simply feeling guilty. However, there was something he still needed to tell Lin Feng. Professor Lin, have you heard of the religion that's recently emerged globally? He stared at Lin Feng, trying to discern the answer in his expression. Lin Feng's expression gave no clue as he replied, Which religion? I've been busy lately and haven't been paying attention to outside world affairs. He'd been busy selecting gods, accumulating points for those who played them, and monitoring Gamora's movements. Ronan had left, but Gamora remained on Blue Planet, obviously seeking the Infinity Stones. Strange had been closely monitoring her movements. However, Gamora's sudden departure from Blue Planet yesterday left both Strange and Lin Feng perplexed. Stark looked at Lin Feng and continued, Professor Lin, during Hela's last invasion, the Demon King's assistants earned the world's deep gratitude. And in many previous crises, gods have stepped forward to avert disaster. Consequently, a wave of worship of the Chinese gods has swept across the globe, giving rise to a new religion called the Chinese divine cult. When I encountered this religion, they demanded a 500 euro membership fee. Stark's words caught Lin Feng's attention. Despite possessing the power of the gods, he always adhered to Rogers's view that pointing guns at everyone's heads and claiming safety was actually hegemony and bullying, not true peace. Therefore, he never interfered with the lives of the people of Blue Star, only keeping a close eye on any divine invasions that might threaten the planet. However, a few days ago, while explaining materials to the archaeological team, he had occasionally heard some news about the Huaxia cult, but at the time, he hadn't paid much attention. But while monitoring the Gamora's movements, Strange would discuss this emerging religious group with him in his spare time, and he felt something was amiss. Now, after returning from Eastern Europe, Stark had encountered this religious group as well, which made him ponder. Religious influence usually doesn't spread so quickly unless it's during times of chaos or when cults are prevalent. However, now that the entire Blue Star is protected by gods, there's no question of chaos, so the nature of this religious group is self-evident. Furthermore, according to Stark's description, they even demand a 500 euro membership fee. This is the situation in Eastern Europe, a region with relatively poor economic conditions, but what about other regions? For example, China? Lin Feng put on his glasses and said seriously, Stark, the phenomenon you mentioned is indeed worthy of attention. Thank you for telling me this news. Stark smiled bitterly. I also want to thank you, Professor, for helping me resolve my confusion and finding the meaning of life. I have decided to set up a charity fund to do my best to help those threatened by the suffering of war. Professor Lin, see you later. Lin Feng watched him go in silence, knowing that he would not see Stark again for a long time. Stark was a man of perseverance and ideas. Having chosen this path, he would persevere. Chapter 25 Loki controls the Mandarin. Chapter 25 Loki controlled the Mandarin. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 25 Loki controlled the Mandarin. Hiss. Chen Haitian took a breath, his face full of shock. Again, this kind of mysterious power, no matter how many times you see it, will shock you and feel incredible. Chen Haitian came back to his senses and looked down at the scripture in his hand. It was a simple and ancient scripture with a texture like paper, but also a bit of satin. There was a character on it. It looked ordinary and there was nothing magical about it. However, Chen Haitian knew that since this was a gift from the Tathagata Buddha, it must be extraordinary. So, he carefully put the scripture away as if he was holding his newborn baby, intending to keep it well. Chen Haitian looked at the place where the Tathagata Buddha appeared again. The lotus growing on the ground was still there. And it was still fresh, with water droplets hanging on it. Chen Haitian thought to himself, he'd once considered inviting Sun Wukong to join his department, preparing to create a division similar to SYNOPSIS, but now, knowing Sun Wukong's background and witnessing the power of figures like them, he hesitated. Was he worthy enough to invite such a powerful figure? Would it be disrespectful? Chen Haitian frowned, torn. He wondered if he should bring this up with Sun Wukong the next time he ran into him. But after a moment's hesitation, Chen Haitian let it go. He'd wait until the next time he saw Sun Wukong. There were important things to do right now. He directed his instructions to the group around him, leave the lotuses alone. Leave them as they are. Also, what just happened is classified as top secret. No one is allowed to disclose or discuss it. Also, get ready. We're heading to Hong Kong immediately. There's a major operation going on there. Last time, their superiors called to say that a terrorist group had stolen a valuable item from SYLD and was smuggling it into Hong Kong. Now they were going to capture this terrorist group. Also, let's see what was stolen. Yes, the subordinate beside him replied. But suddenly, he remembered something, hesitated, and asked, then, what about Thor and the others? Chen Haitian paused after hearing this. Thor and the others had already been able to determine where they came from. The instructions were correct. Let them stay here for now, until we return from Hong Kong. Of course, if they want to leave, don't stop them, Chen Haitian thought for a moment. Thor and the others hadn't broken any laws. At most, Thor had just had his feet washed, which was nothing. Besides, they were from Asgard. If they were kept in custody, there was a fear of more trouble. Hong Kong. A huge luxury cruise ship sailed on the sea. Ahead was the port of Hong Kong. The cruise ship was carrying tourists from many countries, most of them from the United States. In a luxurious room, the curtains were drawn and the lights were on. A middle-aged man in a black robe sat upright on the bed, his eyes closed. Just then, a man approached, bent down, one hand on his chest and the other on his back, and said respectfully, "Sir, we are about to reach the port of Hong Kong." As soon as these words left his mouth, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. A green light flashed in them. It took a second or two for them to return to normal. He was the leader of the 10 Commandments gang. A man who possessed 10 magic rings and possessed powerful magical and technological abilities. His name had long been forgotten, and now he was known only as the Mandarin. How long will it take to reach the shore? About 15 minutes, yes, the Mandarin nodded. You may go down first, yes. After his men left, the Mandarin looked at his right hand, which was covered in rings. He grasped the air, and with the help of magic, a blue light flashed, and a blue cube appeared in his hand. He looked at the blue cube, and the blue light within it seemed to contain unimaginable power. Cosmic magic, wait until I thoroughly study your power, the Mandarin smiled. He had painstakingly stolen this artifact from SYLD and smuggled it to Hong Kong, China, hoping to study the cosmic cube's power there. Having read about Sun Wukong online, he was even more eager to delve into it and gain immense power. The Mandarin was filled with excitement, as if he had already seen himself mastering the cosmic cube's secrets. But then, a leisurely voice suddenly echoed from behind him. This thing's light is truly beautiful. The Mandarin's hair stood on end. Without even a second thought, he whirled around and unleashed a magical attack. Bang! But the cube's light pierced the man's body, striking the television and creating a massive hole, rendering it useless. Huh? The Mandarin asked, puzzled. The man before him gave a mocking chuckle, then vanished like a projection. Where's he? How did he disappear? The Mandarin's eyes widened, his guard shifting. He knew the man's sudden appearance and disappearance meant he hadn't left, but was most likely still nearby. The Mandarin's face was solemn. Suddenly, he sensed something, whirled around, and launched a punch. The punch was coated in a black light, clearly infused with magical power. But Loki blocked it with his hand, then tapped the scepter in his right hand directly on the Mandarin's chest, emitting a blue glow. The Mandarin's body trembled, as if electrocuted, and he trembled violently. At the same time, his eyes turned black, as if dyed. After a few seconds, Loki retracted the scepter. The Mandarin paused, his eyes dark. Then, he knelt on one knee before Loki and said respectfully, "Master, ha." Seeing the other man controlled by the Mind Scepter and becoming his subordinate, Loki laughed heartily. This Mind Scepter is truly useful. With such a magical artifact, I can easily destroy Thor and Sun Wukong. After this, I must find a way to wrest this Mind Scepter from Thanos, Loki thought to himself. However, now wasn't the time to dwell on that, there was more to do. He addressed the Mandarin, "Rise, mortal. I need you to do something. Take the cosmic cube and open the space tunnel. To open the space tunnel, one must possess the power of the cosmic cube." This was why Loki had approached the Mandarin. "Yes," the Mandarin said respectfully. His mind was now controlled by Loki's Mind Scepter, and he only obeyed Loki's commands, having forgotten his original purpose in Hong Kong. Meanwhile, in the United States, Nick had left. Tony looked at the information Nick had left behind. He had projected it using virtual projection technology. It was a palm-sized cube, glowing blue. According to Nick, the energy contained within it could only be described as infinite. Furthermore, this energy stone even contained the rules of space jumps, which humans hadn't even touched upon yet. For Tony, this was a huge attraction. Chapter 26 Hong Kong is in trouble, Tony goes to Hong Kong. Chapter 26 Hong Kong is in trouble, Tony goes to Hong Kong, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 26 Hong Kong is in trouble, Tony goes to Hong Kong. Space technology, Tony was very interested. How great would it be if he could master it? And it can be used not only on Earth, but also in the exploration of the universe. This is definitely a good thing. However, even a person like Nick came to seek his help, which means that this cosmic cube is not so easy to get back. After all, the Mandarin is a dangerous person, who can use magic and has a scientific mind. Tony pondered for a moment. He was hesitant. But then he thought, this Mandarin is going to Hong Kong, and Hong Kong is a Chinese place, and then it might be involved with Sun Wukong. And the origin of Sun Wukong's power interested him even more than the cosmic cube. So, after some hesitation, Tony decided to go to Hong Kong. Jarvis, check the surveillance and gamma radiation data on recent planes and ships bound for Hong Kong from the US, and look for the Mandarin, Tony ordered. According to the information Nick provided, the Tesseract is emitting gamma rays. Since the Mandarin was smuggling it across the border, he had no shielding equipment. By searching this way, they could find the Mandarin. Yes, sir, Jarvis replied. Immediately, it began to execute. Tony's thoughts were clear, analyzing the Mandarin's situation. He went to such great lengths to steal the Tesseract, probably for the special power it holds. However, a dangerous man like him wouldn't do anything good with such power. We must stop him immediately. Tony had a bad feeling. He then touched the reactor on his chest and said, at this point, the power of this reactor is still too low. We need to replace it with a higher powered one. Tony had initially felt a sense of pride and elation at being able to develop such a small reactor. But after watching the video of Sun Wukong, he began to feel that the power of his chest reactor was too weak. It wasn't even powerful enough to withstand a single blow from the other side. We need to upgrade the reactor, Tony muttered, stroking the glowing reactor. Elsewhere, in the garden, a flash of golden light flashed, and Lin Feng appeared in the courtyard. He then removed his role as Tathagata Buddha. His divine aura withered, gradually returning to his true self. Lin Feng's lips curled up in a smile. This trip to the Ministry of State Security had achieved its purpose. The appearance of Tathagata Buddha had completely confirmed what he had said in the lecture. Next up is Loki leading the Chitauri army to attack Earth, right? Lin Feng analyzed. I remember the battle was supposed to take place in New York. However, Thor is now in China, and my character, Sun Wukong, also thwarted Loki's plan. He must hate both Sun Wukong and Thor to the core. So, he'll probably target the Chitauri army to Chinese city, making it easier to deal with us first. Lin Feng pondered this. But soon, he stopped thinking about it. He'd know where it was when the time came. For now, he should finish Sun Wukong's profile. Lin Feng was currently compiling his biography. After all, his current job was to research the events of that ancient time, but for him, this was a surprisingly easy task. The scene shifted. Inside an ancient palace, a hairless figure dressed in yellow gazed into the starry sky. It was none other than the Ancient One. His skin was very pale, an eerie pallor. He gazed at the starry sky, a thoughtful expression on his face, his thoughts unclear. Suddenly, he sensed something and glanced eastward, towards the Xiangjiang temple. There seems to be danger there. The Ancient One's face grew solemn. As Earth's supreme sorcerer, he had a responsibility to protect the planet. Without hesitation, he activated the Eye of Agamotto, hoping to predict the future and see what would happen. However, he saw nothing, only darkness. He suddenly opened his eyes, sweat beading on his forehead. I can't see. What's going on? The Ancient One was surprised, a reaction he rarely experienced. This shouldn't be happening. Could it be related to Sun Wukong appearing in China? Ancient One pondered. When Sun Wukong appeared, he had used the Eye of Agamotto to see where he came from, but he could see nothing. And now it was happening again. Ancient One pondered for a moment, convinced that this was possible. Without hesitation, he turned and walked into the palace, addressing a somewhat portly man. Wang, the Xiangjiang temple's in danger. We must go. Regardless of the situation, he had to go. Wang was Kamartaj's librarian, responsible for selecting mages. He was also Ancient One's right-hand man. At Ancient One's call, he immediately prepared to depart. Together, the two of them opened the multidimensional portal and entered the mezzanine realm, heading straight for Xiangjiang. Meanwhile, Tony was conducting experiments to improve the reactor and increase its power. Use the particle channel to concentrate the fission particles, increasing the number of fissions. Then, enhance the neutron concentration of the palladium metal and improve energy transmission efficiency. While this will cause neutron damage, there's no other way now. Let's try it out first and see how it works, he muttered to himself. Tony knew this thing was embedded in his body. While this neutron damage wouldn't cause significant damage, some problems would inevitably arise. He just didn't know what those problems were yet. However, he needed to fight a formidable enemy, so he had to increase his reaction rate and energy conversion to enhance his strength. But just then, Jarvis' voice suddenly rang out. Sir, I've detected an anomaly in gamma rays on a cruise ship bound from the United States to Hong Kong, China. It's due to arrive at the Hong Kong port in 10 minutes at most. Hearing this, Tony knew even more that time was running out. Once the cruise ship docked, the Mandarin would undoubtedly begin his research on the Tesseract, and who knew what would happen then. So, he had to act quickly to stop the Mandarin. He picked up the reactor he had just built. Jarvis' voice sounded a warning. Sir, this new type of reactor has not been tested beforehand and may be harmful to the body. It is recommended to test it first. It's okay, let's do the test like this. Tony removed the original reactor on his chest and installed the new one. Suddenly, the reactor began to operate, emitting a dazzling white light. At the same time, an indescribable feeling spread from his chest. His body was trembling and a little uncomfortable. And there was a bitter feeling in his mouth. Oh, my mouth is so bitter, Tony couldn't help but say. A moment later, a red and handsome steel armor flew into the sky, flying towards the direction of Hong Kong, China at a high speed. 200. Chapter 199 Uninvited Guests. 200. Chapter 199 Uninvited Guests 2024, 1011 Author, Good Monster Chapter 199 Uninvited Guests. Because in yesterday's interview, Lin Feng asked Yang Jian whether he would marry a wife in the human world, and Yang Jian answered frankly that he might. Today, his phone was blown up. If he had known earlier, he would not have raised this question in front of everyone. The original intention was to show Yang Jian's close attitude towards humans, but Yang Jian's fans turned their attention to him because they did not have Yang Jian's contact information. This made him miserable. However, he had to bear the consequences of his own actions. Since Yang Jian's people-friendly image has been demonstrated, he should not care about such trivial matters. Let Yang Jian appear again another day to divert himself, and the matter will be almost resolved. Chen Haitian noticed Lin Feng's expression gradually relaxing, so he took a glass of water and said, "Someone wants to see you. We can't make a decision casually. It depends on your opinion." Lin Feng looked at Chen Haitian's expression, curious about who he valued so much. Chen Haitian looked at him and answered his question, "The ambassador of the Sakura country, Hashimoto Kanayu." Lin Feng thought about it and decided to meet her. "Then bring her in." Chen Haitian nodded and left again. Hashimoto Kanayu accompanied Chen Haitian into Lin Feng's office. As soon as they met, she said to Lin Feng, "Professor Lin, it's been a long time." Chen Haitian saw this and tactfully left the room. Lin Feng looked up at Hashimoto Kanayu and found that she had lost a lot of weight compared to a few months ago. There were traces of tears on her face, and her mental state was obviously not good. He couldn't help but frown and asked with concern, "Are you in any trouble?" Hashimoto Kanzuki bowed deeply, then replied, "I followed your advice and went deep into the history of Sakura country's invasion of China. I visited many of the sites of that year and consulted a lot of information. I'm sorry, I really didn't know that our Sakura country committed so many crimes against China back then." There was a cry in her voice. Lin Feng looked at her and could feel her sincere remorse. But he still said, "Apologizing to me won't help. It's the souls of those who died who truly deserve an apology." Hashimoto Kanzuki raised her head, stared at Lin Feng, and said firmly, "I will communicate with the Prime Minister and do my best to let the people of Sakura country know about this history." Lin Feng took out her phone and showed it to her. "You don't need to contact your Prime Minister. He has already expelled the war criminals from the Kinguo Ghost Society. I think he has his own reasons." "What do you think?" Hashimoto Kanzuki shook her head. "This is just the Prime Minister's international relations strategy. He doesn't feel truly guilty. The truly sincere approach would be to disclose that history, acknowledge the crimes of those years, and refrain from tampering with history textbooks." Lin Feng smiled. This was a sign of true repentance. It seemed that after learning about this history, Hashimoto Kanzuki also recognized the mistakes of Sakura country and sincerely repented. Hashimoto Kanzuki bowed again. "Professor Lin, I'm sorry to bother you. Goodbye." Lin Feng didn't see her off. It was rare for Sakura country to produce someone who truly repented. So, let her go. However, before Lin Feng could enjoy this rare moment of leisure, Thor and Loki arrived. Seeing their serious expressions, Lin Feng knew Thanos was approaching. Thor's once flowing hair had been cut short, and the lightning power emanating from him made Lin Feng realize that Thor was now a true god of thunder. Despite this, Thor's face was still filled with worry. He looked at Lin Feng and said, "Professor Lin, we just visited the collector, but he's seriously injured, and the ether particles we Asgard entrusted him to collect are gone. Thanos has already obtained the ether stone, and his next move is likely to be against Earth." Lin Feng looked at Thor and Loki, who was holding the spear of Gungnir, and asked in confusion, "What made you think of going to the collector?" Loki was worried that Thor wouldn't be able to explain clearly, so he said, "It's like this. After Hela's last invasion, we rebuilt Asgard and entrusted the ether to the collector. But then we learned of Thanos' ambitions and have been worried that he would harm us. With your guidance, we began to think about becoming stronger. Thor went to stop a man named Ronan and thus realized the power of lightning. I protect Asgard, and with the blessing of the spear of Gungnir, I can fight Thor. But we don't know if this will help us stop Thanos. Thanos' power is even greater than Odin's, and we really don't have the confidence to do it alone." Lin Feng sighed. Thor's encounter with Ronan almost certainly meant Thanos knew the Power Stone's whereabouts. Given his power, it was likely Thanos would soon possess it. Furthermore, from Thor's description, Thanos had visited the Collector's territory, severely injured him, and obtained the ether. This would give Thanos 2 Infinity Stones. His own power was comparable to Odin's, and with the added power of 2 Infinity Stones, he would be even more formidable. It was no wonder Thor and Loki had sought his advice. After pondering, Lin Feng confidently told them the answer, "Thor, Loki, don't worry. Blue Star, Dark Star, and Asgard, we are steadfast allies. Wherever Thanos wishes to invade, the gods of Blue Star will not sit idly by. However, we still need to strengthen our own defenses." Thor anxiously asked, "Strengthen? How?" He couldn't help but be anxious. Although Lin Feng had promised the Chinese gods that they wouldn't sit idly by, he also knew that the Chinese gods would only intervene in times of life and death. Until then, it would be best for them to rely on their own strength. That was why he was so anxious. He now possessed power comparable to Odin, but he also knew that Thanos, combined with the Infinity Stones, would undoubtedly be even more powerful than Odin. If the dwarves hadn't been destroyed, perhaps he could have enlisted their help in forging a weapon that could concentrate his power. The original Thor's hammer had been destroyed by Hela during her invasion of Blue Star, but the dwarves were now history. Now, only the Chinese gods could help him. Lin Feng looked at him and asked, "Thor, besides Gungnir, do you have any other legendary weapons in Asgard?" Thor was stunned, then answered affirmatively, "Yes, Stormbreaker. It can open the Bifrost and maximize human strength, but it only exists in legend. I originally wanted to ask the dwarves to help forge it, but they have been killed." Lin Feng pondered for a moment and said, "There is no time to lose. I will report to the gods immediately and implore them to forge Stormbreaker for you. You should also return to Asgard and set up defenses." Thor and Loki exchanged a glance, nodded, and did not linger. After bidding Thor and Loki farewell, Strange followed closely behind and appeared at Lin Feng's door. "Professor Lin Feng, I'm here." Lin Feng greeted the uninvited Strange with a smile and poured him a cup of coffee. "Dr. Strange, how come you have time to visit today?" He had assumed that Strange had also come to discuss Thanos' latest movements and wanted to discuss countermeasures with him. However, as soon as Strange opened his mouth, he knew he was mistaken. Strange's face was heavy. "Professor Lin, as you know, I've been responsible for monitoring the dynamics of the multiverse, ensuring that its developments don't pose a threat to Blue Planet. Do you remember the Dark Lord Dormammu, whom Lord Gideon expelled last time?" Lin Feng nodded. Dormammu had left a deep impression on him. As one of the few beings to escape his clutches, Dormammu's presence reminded him that he still had room for improvement. Seeing this, Strange felt a sense of relief. As long as Lin Feng knew about Dormammu, his goal would be achieved. Lin Feng would never ignore Dormammu's movements. The Chinese gods would also know of Dormammu's existence. He then told Lin Feng, "Professor Lin, my surveillance has detected Dormammu's movements again. The dark plane he inhabits seems to be unsettled. I suspect he's coveting Blue Planet again." Lin Feng pondered for a moment, wondering if there was some connection between Thanos and Dormammu. After all, Dormammu would always be ready to act whenever Thanos made a move. He informed Strange of Thor and Loki's visit, adding, "Coincidentally, Thanos has already obtained the Ether Stone and may also possess the Power Stone. His next target could be Blue Planet." Strange gasped. "Professor Lin, are you suggesting that Dormammu and Thanos may have reached some kind of agreement?" "Very likely," Lin Feng exclaimed. "We can't be certain, but it's a coincidence that they both harbor ambitions for Blue Planet. Dr. Strange, please continue to closely monitor Dormammu's movements. If necessary, the Chinese gods will intervene." After receiving Lin Feng's response, Strange left with peace of mind. In terms of life form, Dormammu is undoubtedly superior to Thanos. Dormammu has carved out his own dimension and mastered certain rules. In comparison, Thanos is still merely a highly intelligent being. But in terms of threat, Thanos could far surpass Dormammu. Dormammu can only manipulate people's hearts within the dark dimension, exploiting the darkness within them to open a passageway, thereby escaping the dark dimension and threatening Blue Planet. Thanos, however, possesses immense power, and Blue Planet holds half of the 6 Infinity Stones he covets. He could invade Blue Planet at any moment, and now he seems ready to act. After a moment of reflection, Lin Feng called Chen Haitian to inform him of Thanos and Dormammu's potential invasion. He then contacted Black Widow, who currently oversees the Avengers, and asked her to help identify exceptional individuals to bolster Blue Planet's defenses. Finally, he conveyed his vision to Ultron, urging it to pool its resources and construct as many robots and energy shields as possible to minimize potential casualties and economic losses. Upon receiving Lin Feng's message, Ultron quickly identified a country and advised that maximizing its resources would significantly enhance Earth's defenses. However, given that the country had recently announced its opening to the outside world, Ultron suggested that Lin Feng seek its advice in a gentle manner. Lin Feng examined the information Ultron had sent and pondered for a moment. If the opportunity presented itself, he would indeed like to visit Wakanda, the African nation that had recently opened up to the world. As far as Lin Feng knew, Wakanda was the nation on Earth with the richest vibranium resources and the one that contributed most to Thanos' invasion of Blue Planet. Not only did it provide the greatest assistance to the Avengers, it also lured Thanos to set up the main battlefield within its borders, thus preventing the further escalation of the war's negative impact. Even Wakanda's king, Black Panther T'Challa, was ultimately killed by Thanos' snap. Lin Feng had a favorable impression of this nation, and Black Panther T'Challa was a leader he admired. T'Challa was a leader with a broad perspective. If Lin Feng could explain the pros and cons to him, he was confident he would be willing to work with the nations of Blue Planet to build a joint defense system. To prepare for the impending invasion of Thanos and Dormammu's aggression, nations around the world were joining forces to form a strategic global military alliance. Based on the United Nations, they were engaging in frequent diplomatic activities and signing numerous agreements to jointly prepare for the potential invasion. Even the United States, which typically had a tense relationship with China, was not perfunctory this time. After all, Thanos' invasion would be a disaster for all of humanity. Over the waters of Sakura and China, a massive spaceship suddenly appeared in Blue Planet's outer space. Although it hadn't yet entered Blue Planet's territory, its vast, sky-blocking scale was already awe-inspiring. Lin Feng donned his glasses, and as expected, Thanos' presence appeared. However, he didn't suddenly descend upon the surface. Thanks to Thor's early warning and the precious time buffer, the nations of Blue Planet quickly completed their defensive deployments. Even before Thanos entered the atmosphere, they began evacuating their populations. Meanwhile, Ultron was poised, preparing to activate its shield and broadcast a battle live worldwide, as the public would undoubtedly be watching closely. Gazing at Thanos' warships, Lin Feng frowned. Thanos' strategy was drastically different from Hela's. Hela employed a widespread, focused attack strategy, dispersing her forces across major cities worldwide and forcibly attacking densely populated areas, aiming to annihilate as many people as possible. Thanos, on the other hand, planned to focus his attack, first conquering China before moving on to other territories. Clearly, he was well aware of the crucial importance of the Chinese gods. By defeating them, he would have a chance to seize the coveted Infinity Stones. This clearly demonstrated a depth of Thanos' obsession with the Infinity Stones. Lin Feng quickly contacted Thor. Thor, Thanos has begun invading Blue Planet. Is there anything unusual in Asgard? Thor quickly responded, everything is normal. Asgard is safe. Professor Lin, don't worry, I'll be there soon. Lin Feng still reminded him, Thor, just bring a few people with you. Asgard is still being rebuilt. You must pay more attention to Asgard's safety. Thor smiled, Professor Lin, don't worry. Now that the 3 Infinity Stones are on Blue Planet, Thanos' attention should be focused on Blue Planet. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 27, Mandarin arrives in Hong Kong. Chapter 27, The Mandarin arrives in Hong Kong, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 27, The Mandarin arrives in Hong Kong. Team A, ambush here. Team B, ambush here. Team C, stand by here. If anything unexpected happens, rush over to support immediately. We must not let the Mandarin and his terrorist group escape. Chen Haitian has already arrived in Hong Kong City. He has received intelligence from his superiors that the Mandarin and his terrorist group are likely arriving in Hong Kong City by cruise ship. Therefore, they are currently preparing for battle at Hong Kong City's port. Chen Haitian currently has no idea how serious the ensuing trouble will be. Woo! For safety, the Mandarin's group split up and disembarked, each following the crowd and awaiting the order to regroup. At that moment, a middle-aged man wearing a sun hat, casual clothes, and carrying a black backpack followed the crowd forward. It was the Mandarin. The Mandarin was unaware that the Chinese had already deployed forces to capture him. He had simply split up his group for safety, even disguising himself. The Mandarin had a base in Hong Kong, and someone was waiting outside the harbor, and he was about to meet them. Once we're safe, I'll begin preparing for my master's mission, the Mandarin thought. He was currently under Loki's control, and Loki had tasked him with using the Tesseract to open a dimensional portal, allowing Thanos' Chitauri army to descend upon Earth. However, He didn't know that he was already being targeted by Chinese officials. Report. The Mandarin has been spotted, a subordinate reported. Oh, where's he? Chen Haitian's eyes lit up, and he quickly approached and asked. Look, Chief. That's him, a subordinate pointed to the results on the computer. It was surveillance footage. Among them was a foreigner wearing a sun hood and carrying a black backpack. Facial analysis showed a 75% resemblance to the Mandarin. Chen Haitian, observing the surveillance footage, immediately realized the man was wearing makeup, attempting to sneak into Hong Kong City. He immediately picked up the intercom and announced, "Attention, all teams. The Mandarin has disembarked. Move." The Mandarin continued walking. But as he walked, he suddenly realized something was amiss. Where were the people around him? He glanced around. No one was around, as if they had vanished into thin air. Not only that, even the sound was gone. There had been a loud noise coming from the cruise ship just now. Puzzled, the Mandarin suddenly realized what was happening. He quickly turned around, about to return to the port. But as he turned, he saw a man in a suit approaching. The Mandarin frowned, staring intently, unsure of his intentions. The man in the suit was Chen Haitian. Chen Haitian stopped and addressed the Mandarin in front of him. Without further ado, he got straight to the point. Mandarin, you've been surrounded by the Chinese military. Give up all resistance and surrender. Hand over the stolen goods you've stolen from SHIELD and you'll be treated leniently. Upon hearing this, the Mandarin raised his lip and said, "What if I don't surrender? Then there's only one way to go," Chen Haitian scolded. With a wave of his hand, armed soldiers appeared from all directions, collectively aiming at the Mandarin. Chen Haitian's face was serious. He had read the Mandarin's profile and knew he was an extremely dangerous individual. Therefore, if he refused to surrender again, he would order his execution to prevent any unforeseen consequences. Seeing this situation, the Mandarin sneered disdainfully, "You, a bunch of puny soldiers, think you can take on me, arrogant." The word popped into Chen Haitian's mind. Without hesitation, he lowered his hand to prevent any unforeseen consequences and shouted, "Fire!" Bang, bang, bang. Suddenly, a barrage of gunfire erupted, bullets raining down upon the Mandarin with impunity. But then, a green light burst forth from the Mandarin's body, transforming into a green, transparent sphere. Countless bullets struck the green shield, but the immense force barely caused it to tremble. The shield was a finger's thickness. These bullets couldn't penetrate even a fraction, let alone break through. Chen Haitian gasped, his eyes widening. Damn it! This Mandarin was also a transcendent. There was no mention of him in previous records. Seeing Chen Haitian's surprise, the Mandarin sneered. Countless brass bullets embedded themselves in the green shield, like tiny specks of yellow. The surrounding soldiers, stunned by this sight, involuntarily stopped firing. If the previous son Wukong was a mysterious ancestor from an ancient time, then this Mandarin was a true modern man. Yet, he now possessed extraordinary powers. This truly shocked them. The Mandarin clapped his hands, and the green shield vanished. The bullets all clattered to the ground with a resounding clatter. "Excuse me," he said, "I'm in a hurry to attend to an important matter. I don't have time to waste with you here. So, please die here." With that, the Mandarin held out his hands, and the rings on his 10 fingers glowed green. Boom! But at that moment, a beam of white energy shot towards the Mandarin, but was blocked by a green shield. The Mandarin was unharmed, but his spell was interrupted. He looked up in the direction of the beam and saw a red figure flying towards him. The Mandarin frowned. Chen Haitian also saw the sudden attack of light. He quickly looked over and was immediately delighted. Is he here? Sun Wukong. However, a closer look revealed a different resemblance. Sun Wukong had previously appeared as a red glow. This one, however, resembled a figure. Could it be him? Chen Haitian instantly thought of someone. In the blink of an eye, a red figure appeared overhead. The Mandarin looked at the figure and said, "Tony Stark, sure enough, it's him," Chen Haitian thought to himself. He had already thought of it. Is he here to help? Chen Haitian wondered. Tony first looked at Chen Haitian and nodded as a greeting. Then, he looked at the Mandarin and said, "Mandarin, we finally meet." Tony and the Mandarin had a deep grudge. He had been kidnapped and taken to the cave by the Mandarin's organization, who wanted him to be used as a slave and develop weapons. "Stark," the Mandarin said with a smile. "I suddenly feel a little regretful. I should have had my men kill you earlier, but you don't have that chance anymore. Tony pointed both hands at the Mandarin, his palms radiating a dazzling white light, seemingly imbued with immense power. "Surrender and hand over what you stole from S.H.I.E.L.D., or you will die here," Tony said seriously. Chapter 28 recommends a good book on creative flow. Chapter 28, recommending a great book on creative flow, 2024-08-19 author, Good Monster. Chapter 28, recommending a great book on creative flow. Book title, Others Follow Advice to Imitate Celebrities, But You Start by Playing God? Pen name, The Shelter. Synopsis, Lin Nan was born with a serious face, a captivating gaze, and a majestic demeanor. According to ancient texts, this is the look of a god, the majesty of an emperor. One day, a classmate happened to suggest that since online imitations of celebrities are popular, some people even imitate Xiao Wu on a sewing machine. He advised Lin Nan to seek advice from netizens online, perhaps to find a way out. Lin Nan, ever since he was young, followed the advice and started live streaming that day. Newcomer starts live streaming, seeking guidance from the gods. The host has an extraordinary aura, a commanding presence without even anger. Why not give it a try as a deity? That makes sense. The host has a unique face. Go out and buy a cassock, play Tathagata, and sit in front of the camera, beating a wooden fish. Lin Nan followed a netizen's advice, purchasing props, costumes, and makeup. He then researched mythology and folklore, ultimately settling on the role of the thunder god, Jiushan Yingying Li Sheng Pu He Xianzhen. With everything in place, Lin Nan, donning the 9 light shoes, an immortal robe, a lightning belt around his waist, and a male and female whip in hand, seemed truly divine. He sat in front of the camera, attracting countless onlookers and jokingly asking him to show off his skills. "With my command, I unite the creations of heaven and earth. Thunder God, help me." Then, with a low cry, Lin Nan formed a seal with his left hand and pointed to the sky with his right. Then, with a deafening roar of thunder, a flash of lightning streaked across the sky, and dark clouds surged in. Suddenly, all netizens were stunned. "Are you serious, host?" Searching for the book title, keywords in the title, and pen names will all find the results. There's no way to link to a single chapter, so everyone will have to search manually. 201. Chapter 200 The Eve of War. 201. Chapter 200, The Eve of War. 2024-1011 author, Good Monster. Chapter 200, The Eve of War. Lin Feng thought about it and realized that it was indeed the case. Thanos' target was the Infinity Stones. Only the Infinity Stones could capture his attention. His current concerns about Asgard were indeed unnecessary. At this moment, an object shaped like a donut plummeted toward Earth, its target surprisingly being the Immortal Island. Lin Feng sneered. The Titans were truly overestimating their capabilities, daring to attack the Immortal Island, simply courting their own demise. The donut burned to ashes before it even reached the Immortal Island. However, Lin Feng harbored doubts, noticing that nothing was above the donut. At the same time, 2 aliens suddenly appeared on the streets of Yanjing. One resembled an octopus, the other was tall and burly, comparable in size to the Hulk. "Professor Lin Feng, 2 aliens have appeared on the streets of Yanjing," Chen Haitian said anxiously over the phone. Lin Feng stared at the image projected by Ultron on the big screen, lost in thought. Ebony Marcus and Black Dwarf, 2 of Thanos' vanguards in Earth's invasion. One pursues extreme violence, the other fights with grace and wisdom. Both are powerful titans, deeply trusted by Thanos. It seems the donut was just a feint, Thanos' purpose merely to test Blue Planet's defenses against foreign invasions and the power of the Immortal Island gods against the Titans. Thanos' combat intelligence is already evident. Before the war officially begins, he has grasped the key points. Even as a powerful and highly intelligent being, he chooses to fight with all his might. This contrasts sharply with Hela, who prides herself on her strength, and makes Lin Feng respect Thanos even more. "Listen to me, and be grateful. You are all about to die at the hands of Thanos' son," Ebony Marcus said, his tone calm yet tinged with a certain self-righteousness. "Be grateful. Your meaningless lives will contribute to the great cause of conserving cosmic resources. And all of this is due to the grace of Lord Thanos." Ebony Marcus' voice was filled with alluring power. It seemed Wu Mu Hao had even studied the Chinese language, as his words were clear and resonant. He was engrossed in his emotions, his graceful demeanor giving the impression of a consummate speaker rather than a bloody executioner about to slaughter the lives of other civilizations. Furthermore, He seemed to possess a true mastery of psychic powers and magical techniques, his voice possessing a powerful allure. "Excuse me for interrupting," the long-absent Tony Stark reappeared. "Mr. Squidward, Blue Planet is closed today. You'd better pack up and leave immediately. You are not welcome on Blue Planet." The Avengers gradually arrived at the scene in Yanjing. Meanwhile, Lin Feng was preoccupied with another matter. Thanos did not possess the Space Stone. According to the original plot, Thanos' invading army would have been stopped by Wakanda's protective shield upon invading Blue Planet, suggesting they had not prioritized the development of space-based defenses. Thanks to Ultron's continuous evolution and the concerted efforts of global governments, every piece of land on the planet is now covered by an energy shield, and its strength is only slightly stronger than Wakanda's. How could Ebony Marcus and Black Dwarf simply ignore the shield and appear on the streets of Yanjing? Was Thanos truly colluding with the Kree? Stark, still his flamboyant self, interrupted Ebony Marquis's speech, realizing he couldn't allow him to continue his hypnotic rhetoric. Interrupted by Stark, Ebony Marcus lost his graceful demeanor, but calmly adjusted his collar before turning his gaze to Strange, who stood beside Stark. "Oh, the Guardian of the Time Stone," he said, ignoring Stark. Strange, in turn, watched Ebony Marcus warily, anticipating his next move. "Excuse me, is this garrulous creature your spokesperson?" Ebony Marquis's voice was calm, yet a hint of contempt lingered. Strange frowned slightly, sensing the other man's profound magical attainments, but he still answered Ebony's question with a serious expression. "Of course not. I can express myself, and no one can speak for me." Then, changing the subject, "But Mr. Stark is right. You are not welcome on Blue Star. How dare you trespass on Blue Star without permission and trample on its soil?" With this, his momentum soared, and he assumed a fighting stance. The magic circle in his hand loomed, demonstrating its power. Strange's words were stinging, and Stark smiled knowingly, teasing, "Octopus face, he told you to get out." The two men's sarcastic remarks made Ebony's heart simmer with anger, but he maintained a calm appearance and said to Black Dwarf, "These two Blue Star people really annoy me." Black Dwarf, despite his rough appearance, was actually very quick-witted. He immediately understood the Ebony's implication and knew that Ebony did not want to take action personally, so he prepared to make a preliminary move to test the waters. The belligerent Black Dwarf, knowing this was Ebony Marquis's ploy, couldn't contain his exultation. He heaved his massive weapon and strode forward. As he approached, the wind whistled around him, and the air seemed oppressively heavy. Stark sighed, "If only Dr. Senna were here. Hulk would surely appreciate this opponent." He removed his sunglasses and stepped forward, his nano-armor emerging. In Lin Feng's office, Ultron stood beside him. "Professor Lin, these are the soldiers from Titan's army, Thanos' vanguard. They are tall, incredibly fast, possess incredible explosive power, and possess exceptional durability. Their agility and resilience far surpass the average Blue Planet creature. Furthermore, they are fearless and valiant. Once they descend upon Earth, it will be difficult for humanity, with its current military and technological capabilities, to mount an effective defense or counterattack." Lin Feng, fully aware of the importance of knowing both oneself and the enemy, began preparing a countermeasure against Thanos' army after witnessing Ebony Marcus and Black Dwarf's ability to bypass the spatial barriers and reach Yanjing. His original plan was to launch a counterattack outside the atmosphere, but this time he miscalculated. Fortunately, he had evacuated residents in various areas in a timely manner, so even if a large-scale war broke out, the losses would be manageable. He sensed two presences approaching his office. Judging by their infiltration patterns and the weapons they carried, they were Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. Clearly, Thanos intended to attack from multiple fronts, seizing the Infinity Stones with minimal effort and in the shortest possible time. Lin Feng smiled faintly. Ultron's network also detected Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive's infiltration. Despite their sudden appearance, Ultron detected them immediately. Bang! Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive collided headfirst into the protective shield. Lin Feng opened the door, his smile radiating innocence. "Welcome to Blue Planet, you two." Proxima Midnight snorted disdainfully, "Hypocritical Blue Starians." She then raised her weapon and attempted to breach the energy shield. However, how could Ultron's meticulously constructed energy shield be easily breached? After a long effort, she struggled in vain and finally gave up. At that moment, Corvus Glaive raised his peerless blade and thrust forward, instantly shattering the energy shield like paper. Ultron immediately analyzed the material of the peerless blade. This is a cosmic substance, a material not yet commensurate with human technology. However, this weapon can easily destroy atomic structures, and even armor made of vibranium would be unable to withstand its attack. Lin Feng smiled and adjusted his glasses. Ultron, they're here for the Mind Stone on your head. Don't worry about me. The Tesseract is still guarded by Rogers in the United States. I'm worried they can't hold it, so you can go there and help. Ultron glanced at Lin Feng, and remembering that he was the spokesperson for the gods, he left with peace of mind. Lin Feng looked at Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. Would you like some coffee? The two ignored him and leaped to their feet, attempting to capture the spokesperson for the gods. Lin Feng suddenly leaped, instantly creating distance between them and pulled a gleaming golden cudgel from his back. It had been a while since he'd played Sun Wukong, and the appearance of Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive was a perfect opportunity to relive his old days. He quickly donned his Sun Wukong costume and shouted, "Hey! You two monsters, where are you going? Look to me, old son, for a blow." This sudden transformation surprised Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive, but it didn't affect their attacks. Their weapons continued to strike at Lin Feng without hesitation. Lin Feng intended to buy time for Ultron. After all, Thanos had 5 loyal generals, but only 4 had appeared, leaving the remaining one unseen. Furthermore, it seemed Thanos' army could bypass Ultron's elaborate protective shield and reach the surface of Blue Planet directly from space. "Dad, are these 2 aliens very powerful?" a little boy asked his father, blinking curiously. Helmut looked at his son in his arms, smiled fondly, and said, "Son, they're so powerful they can fight Stark and that magician to a standstill." The boy became even more curious. "Dad, are they here to invade us?" Helmut stroked his head and said, "Yes, but don't worry, the gods are watching over us." He smiled at the boy's adoring gaze. "When Daddy completes his mission, I'll take you and Mom to China to visit the gods." "Great!" The boy danced with joy. Seeing his son's excitement, Helmut also smiled happily. In the office, Lin Feng, wielding his golden cudgel, ruthlessly suppressed Proxima Midnight and Corvus Glaive. Even a god of Sun Wukong's caliber would be more than enough to deal with these two. While they were Thanos' most elite and powerful warriors, Sun Wukong was on Thanos' equal, so he could easily defeat them. "Professor Lin Feng, Thanos is preparing to launch a suicide attack on the energy shield over China." Lin Feng's brow furrowed upon hearing this. Because energy shields were deployed across the globe, their thickness was insufficient. While they could withstand the initial wave of attacks, if Thanos were to go all out and concentrate his forces for a sustained assault, the shield wouldn't have time to recover and would be easily breached. Lin Feng quickly formulated a strategy: notify the governments of East Asia that Thanos' forces are about to attack from the atmosphere. Prepare to meet the enemy. At the same time, notify the rest of the world to closely monitor the atmospheric energy shield to prevent Thanos from making a feint to the east and breaching the weakest points. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed from the sky, and a massive warship appeared in the atmosphere. During a break in the battle, Lin Feng looked up at the situation above and saw that Thanos' relentless attack was rapidly crumbling the shield. Lin Feng sighed. "I hope the armies of all nations are prepared." Then, he stopped playing around and focused on the 2 men before him. Thanos' all-out approach made Lin Feng realize that he had underestimated his opponent. He dispatched 2 of Thanos' minions with a single blow, then soared upwards on a cloud, watching the energy shield shatter. A dense swarm of vanguards emerged from the sky, their faces grim and their 6 powerful arms radiating their might. Lin Feng, with a thought, plucked a hair, blew a breath, and spun countless clones, charging towards the parachuting vanguards. Although he had effectively halted the vanguard's initial charge, Lin Feng remained steadfast. These clones were barely 1,000th as powerful as his original, but they were more than enough to defeat these vanguards, who were essentially biological weapons. However, despite the vanguard's desperate tactics, they continue their slow but steady advance. An unknown number of Thanos' troops have appeared on the surface of Huaxia. The Chinese army has organized a counterattack. An unknown number of Thanos' troops have appeared on the surface of Yinghu. The Yinghu army is organizing a counterattack. An unknown number of Thanos' troops have appeared on the surface of Lagos. The residents of Lagos are being evacuated. The military is small, and nearby robotic forces have been mobilized for support. An unknown number of Thanos' troops have appeared on the surface of Sokovia. The residents of Sokovia are evacuating in an orderly manner. The military is small, and mercenaries and volunteers are maintaining order and counterattacking. Nearby robotic forces have been mobilized. Ultron's voice continued to reach Lin Feng through the network. Lin Feng no longer hesitated, creating more clones to travel around the world. Thanos had finally deployed his space technology, which could bypass energy shields and forcibly enter the surface of Blue Planet from outside the atmosphere, and it was done on a quantitative scale. Judging from the emergency information conveyed by Ultron from various places, Thanos had made a huge investment this time. However, it was unknown where Thanos himself was at the moment. Lin Feng activated his clairvoyance, but could not see Thanos outside the atmosphere. Instead, he saw an endless tide of vanguards, Chitauri, and leviathans. Lin Feng, intent on capturing the king first, couldn't find Thanos. He used clones to delay the vanguard's advance while he prepared to support Strange and Stark. After several fierce exchanges, Ebony Marcus and Black Dwarf began to demonstrate their true strength. Black Dwarf's hammer sent Stark flying, sending him flying across a street and even through a building. The immense force left Stark dizzy and nearly breathless. Meanwhile, the king was urgently evacuating the crowd, while Strange, in an attempt to restrain Ebony Marcus, cast a magical robe. Chapter 29 Loki's Visit. Chapter 29, Loki's Visit 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 29, Loki's Visit. Boom, but just as Tony finished speaking, the Mandarin raised his hand and shot out a beam of light. Tony quickly dodged. The beam flew past, hitting the advertising screen on a building, punching a hole. Tony's face darkened beneath his armored head. He turned to look at the Mandarin again and said, "Then there's no room for negotiation." Without hesitation, he settled all old scores, swooping down on the Mandarin. With a bang, he sent him flying, crashing into a store. He then warned Chen Haitian, "Get out of here. You can't help in this fight anymore." With that, he quickly took off and rushed towards the store. Seeing this, Chen Haitian gritted his teeth, his desire to create a department of superhumans growing stronger. "Go, retreat. Let's get out of here. Leave the battlefield to Iron Man," he commanded loudly. The surrounding civilians had already been evacuated, and now they were the only ones left in the area. After a while, they evacuated to a safe area. Chen Haitian stood on a building, watching the battle unfold in the distance. Rumbling sounds could be heard from time to time, and from time to time, brilliant white lights could be seen piercing the sky or striking the buildings, shattering large pieces of glass and masonry, and raining down debris. Although he couldn't see the specifics of the battle, he could imagine how fierce the fighting was. Chen Haitian frowned. At this moment, a subordinate nearby asked worriedly, "Director, do you think Iron Man can handle the Mandarin?" "I don't know," Chen Haitian shook his head. The Mandarin's magic made it uncertain whether Iron Man could handle him. After all, one relies on magic, something supernatural, while the other relies on technology. While Tony's level of technology could be considered supernatural, there was still a fundamental difference between the two. Just as Chen Haitian finished speaking, there was a sudden boom. A beam of light, several times larger than any before it, shot diagonally up into the sky. Bang! With a resounding roar, it pierced through a building and pierced the sky. Hong Kong had been overcast today, looking like it was going to rain, but this beam of light pierced the sky, creating a hole in the clouds. Sunlight streamed through the hole. Seeing this, Chen Haitian and his companions collectively gasped, their faces filled with shock. But then, there was no more movement, as if the battle was over. "Why is there no sound over there? Is it over? Who won?" "I don't know," the group murmured. Chen Haitian, too, was puzzled, unsure of the winner. But just then, a red figure flew over and quickly landed. It was Iron Man. Chen Haitian's heart skipped a beat, believing Iron Man had won. But just as he was about to speak, the Iron Man suit opened, and Tony stepped out. He coughed a few times, his face flushing unusually red. Then, with a look of worry on his face, he said, "The Mandarin has escaped. You guys, hurry and hunt him down. I have a feeling he'll use that Tesseract for something dangerous." With that, he slipped back into his Iron Man suit and flew away. Chen Haitian was shocked upon hearing this. While he wasn't sure if Tony's words were true, it was best to treat them as if they were. He immediately called out to his subordinates, "Quick, notify everyone else. Search the city for the Mandarin. Even if we have to dig deep, we'll find him." "Yes." The subordinates, having heard what Iron Man had said, grew nervous, Realizing the gravity of the situation, they sprang into action. Chen Haitian followed. As he ran, he thought, damn it. If only Sun Wukong or that Tathagata Buddha were here. If Tony can't do it, those two definitely can. They might be able to easily destroy the Mandarin. Tony soared through the sky. The suit had been badly damaged in the battle with the Mandarin. While it could still fight, he needed a new one to prevent any future incidents. Tony was also perpetually anxious, as if something serious was about to happen. Sir, we've detected an abnormality in your body. Just then, Jarvis' voice rang out. What's the abnormality? The particle collisions in the reactor have caused the palladium to become unstable. It's spreading and is now eroding your body through your bloodstream. Please remove the reactor as soon as possible and seek treatment. Tony remained silent. He had upgraded the reactor and installed it without testing it. This was inherently unstable. He hadn't anticipated the palladium poisoning. But how could he possibly remove it now? This reactor was far more powerful than the previous one. If he had used the previous one in a battle with the Mandarin, he would likely have been killed. Tony remembered the white light released by the Mandarin's final use of the Tesseract, which he had narrowly avoided. If he hit, the suit would surely be damaged over 90%, and he'd be finished. Meanwhile, in the area where Tony and the Mandarin were fighting, on a building, Loki, holding the Mind Scepter, gazed at the devastation below, a smile on his face. He hadn't been seen since he took control of the Mandarin. He was afraid of being discovered by that Monkey King. The last time he sent out the destroyers, they were all destroyed by Monkey King. Although he was furious and wanted to kill Monkey King, he was also filled with fear of him. So, he planned to stay hidden and avoid attracting attention until the Chitauri arrived. While that slave is preparing the space channel, I'll make contact with the civilization of this planet, Loki said with a smile. After the Chitauri attacked this planet and stole the Infinity Stones, it became his. Although he despised this planet, he still wanted to be the king of Asgard. But something is better than nothing, right? Loki smiled and immediately cast a spell, transforming his attire into a black suit. The Mind Staff in his hand also transformed into an ordinary hand. At that moment, he resembled a gentleman, yet his expression and demeanor held an unusual arrogance. A moment later, Loki was walking through another area. The people there were still unaware of what had happened at the port. Everything was business as usual. And they had no idea what would happen next. Loki used the Mind Staff to gather information, but he discovered that many people were discussing a man named Lin Feng. This man was a great scholar, and he even had some knowledge of Sun Wukong. Loki was delighted. I must visit such a person. Learn more about Sun Wukong so I can take him down. Without further ado, Loki immediately found Lin Feng's location. He then sought out the Mandarin, who was hiding out, researching the dimensional channel, and asked him for the cosmic cube, so he could use it to reach Lin Feng's residence. Chapter 30 Professor Lin. Chapter 30 Professor Lin 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 30 Professor Lin Feng's residence. Lin Feng was sitting at the desk, writing about Sun Wukong. He had already written about Sun Wukong's birth, his apprenticeship, and so on. Now he has written about the plot of the Havoc in Heaven. And he also planned to temporarily write about the Havoc in Heaven and end before being pressed under the Five Elements Mountain by Tathagata. Of course, he did not write too much detail. Because there is a key problem. If it is written in too much detail and everything is covered, it is easy to arouse suspicion. It is better to be detailed like this, but some parts are unclear and not perfect. Besides, isn't history like this? Erlang Shen was ordered to deal with Sun Wukong. Lin Feng was writing, and suddenly found that the next role he could play could be Erlang Shen. Erlang Shen is quite powerful, and my lecture this time, featuring the battle between Erlang Shen and Sun Wukong, will undoubtedly spark curiosity about him. Then, when I play Erlang Shen and appear in person, won't that create a huge sensation? Lin Feng's excitement grew. But just then, someone arrived. It was Principal Zhao Songyang and Professor Feng Minimum. Professor Lin, we've come to see you, Zhao Songyang greeted. Welcome, welcome. Lin Feng put down his pen, stood up, and smiled. Please sit down. I'll get 2 cups of tea, no need to bother. We just wanted to come and see. We'll be gone after a while, haha, even if we're going to sit for a while, we still have some tea. Lin Feng went to make some tea. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min saw this and didn't try to stop him. They sat down. Suddenly, Fang Min noticed a pen and notebook on the desk. She turned to Lin Feng, who was making tea, and asked, "Professor Lin, what are you writing about?" "Oh, about Sun Wukong," Lin Feng said. Professor Feng didn't go into a lot of detail in his last lecture. "So I'm planning to update the information I have and share it publicly so everyone can learn more about Sun Wukong." Zhao Songyang and Fang Min were stunned by this, then immediately delighted. Fang Min, in particular, had very little information on Sun Wukong. He only had a fragmented copy, incomplete and worm-eaten. Therefore, the information he could gather was minimal. He had always been curious about Sun Wukong and wanted to know more about him. Now that Professor Lin knew about him and planned to write it down and publish it, it was great news. Zhao Songyang was also excited. He, too, wanted to know about Sun Wukong. He asked impatiently, "Professor Lin, can we take a look?" "Sure. But I haven't finished it yet." Zhao Songyang and Fang Min, excited by the first part of the sentence, stood up and walked over to the table. But the second part stopped them dead in their tracks. "Not finished yet." Then, they exchanged glances and agreed to hold off for now. They'd wait until Professor Lin finished and gave his lecture before revisiting the story of Sun Wukong. With that in mind, they decided to take a look at the notebook. But before they could even read, they were captivated by Lin Feng's handwriting. Professor Feng Min praised him. "Professor Lin, you're not only knowledgeable, but your handwriting is also beautiful. Yes, your strokes are powerful and strong, and the characters flow seamlessly, with a flowing beauty. And you used a gel pen. If you'd used a brush, it could be framed and kept as a family heirloom." Zhao Songyang commented. He wasn't flattering, he was speaking the truth. As the president of Wukong University, he possesses a strong understanding of this subject, so his words clearly indicate that Lin Feng's calligraphy is truly remarkable. "Thank you very much. It's nothing special, it's just practice," Lin Feng said with a smile. This calligraphy was actually inspired by his experience playing the role of Tathagata Buddha, which led to his writing. Of course, if you were to write like this while portraying Tathagata Buddha, the words would imbue him with the Buddha's nature and principles. At that moment, I'm afraid those two old men would decide to shave their heads and become monks on the spot after taking one look at it. Hearing this, Zhao Songyang nodded and chuckled. "Yes, your calligraphy is impossible without diligent practice and natural talent." Lin Feng smiled again. Then, tea was brewed, and he came over with it. The three of them sat down and chatted for a while, before Zhao Songyang and Fang Min excused themselves, pledging not to disturb Lin Feng's work. The scene changed. Loki had arrived in the capital, harnessing the power of the cosmic cube. Meanwhile, the Mandarin's work on the space tunnel was proceeding smoothly. Loki, dressed in a suit, stood beneath a tree, using his mind staff to gather information. People here are also talking about this Lin Feng. It seems this Lin Feng is a man of real ability. Loki's lips curled up, further reaffirming his decision to visit this Lin Feng. But then, unnoticed, a husky approached his feet, sniffed, and lifted its hind legs. A stream of yellow water shot out, splashing onto his trouser legs. Loki stared around, concentrating on gathering information, oblivious. It wasn't until he felt a damp, hot sensation on his legs, accompanied by a foul odor, that he looked down. He immediately exploded. A lowly creature had dared to urinate on his leg. "Ah! You lowly creature, you're courting death," Loki shouted furiously. The husky, startled by the shout, took off running before even finishing its piss, heading towards a young man who was running towards him. The young man was sweating profusely, having obviously been chasing the husky. "Husky pig, why are you running so fast? I have to chase you," the young man scolded the husky. Then he looked up at the man in front of him. He saw that his trouser legs were wet, and there were water stains at his feet. He was looking at him with murderous eyes. His heart skipped a beat, and he swallowed hard. He glanced at the husky next to him, then at the puddle at its feet. He immediately realized something and hurriedly pulled the husky forward, apologizing to Loki. "Excuse me, sir. Did my dog pee on you? How much are your pants? I'll compensate you." "I'm so sorry," the young man apologized hastily, then kicked the husky next to him and cursed, "You beast, look what you've done." The husky, taken in by the kick, lay on the ground in frustration. Loki's face darkened, his eyes blazing with fire. He said in a deep voice, "You're done with just an apology and compensation? Do you know what kind of being is standing before you?" "What kind of being?" the young man asked, startled by Loki's expression. "I'm the Prince of Asgard, a god high and mighty," Loki shouted. Then, Pointing at the other person, he cursed, "You lowly human. How dare you allow this even lower-class creature beside you to urinate on my legs? Do you know how expensive this dress I'm wearing is? It's a birthday gift my mother made for me, using silk from the silkworm king of the celestial silkworm planet and dyes from the cosmic rainbow. It's priceless. You lowly human, you've angered a god." Loki had never encountered such a situation before. It was undoubtedly an insult to him. Furthermore, the dress he was wearing was made by his mother. So what do you want to do?" the young man asked, stunned. "When I become the master of this earth, I will skin and tear the bones from this lowly creature, leaving it to suffer eternally. As for you, I will make you the lowest of slaves, toiling like a beast, working day and night." From the human information Loki had gathered, almost everyone hated work. Therefore, he considered this the most horrific punishment for Earthlings. The young man swallowed hard at this. He looked at Loki warily, then crouched down slowly. Without a word, he picked up the husky at his feet and ran away. Seeing this, Loki thought the other party was scared. He sneered and tried to use his mind wand to listen to the fear in the other party's heart. But he didn't expect to hear these words. "Damn it, I've run into a psychopath. Run." 202. Chapter 201, Capture the Leader First. 202. Chapter 201, Capture the King First. 2024-1012 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 201, Capture the King First. However, Ebony Marcus took advantage of the situation and dragged Strange closer. Strange was not good at close combat and was caught off guard by the sudden attack. Before he could react, his hands and feet were tightly bound by Ebony Marcus's ropes. Strange only had time to recite the protective spell before he was tied up tightly. Ebony Marcus looked at the Blue Star Wizard who had competed with his magic with great interest, and praised him sincerely. "Your magic is really interesting, maybe it will be loved by children." As he said that, he reached out to take the time stone from Strange's neck with the attitude of a winner. Ebony Marcus only felt a burning pain and quickly retracted his hand. Strange, breathless, observed his bewildered state, tauntingly remarking, "The spell may be simple, but it's indestructible." The Ebony Lord, enraged, snarled, "Then don't blame me for being ruthless." He then tightened the restraints, plunging Strange into unconsciousness. Stark felt only a brief moment of dizziness, but he forced himself to catch his breath and quickly recovered. This was a crucial moment in the battle, and any delay could be fatal. Yet, his reaction was still a little slow. When he regained consciousness, he saw Black Dwarf's hammer growing ever larger, and it was too late to dodge. Just as he was about to close his eyes and wait for death, a familiar, slightly mischievous young voice rang out, "Hello, men." "Hi, Mr. Stark," it was Peter Parker from Queens. "Shouldn't the kid be on the school bus?" Stark, perplexed, stood up and fired lasers at Black Dwarf, demanding, "Kid, what are you doing here?" A field trip at the Museum of Modern Art." Parker answered Stark's question while attacking Black Dwarf, but curiosity remained. "Mr. Stark, what's wrong with this guy?" Stark briefly explained, "He's from outer space, and he wants to steal the time stone from the wizard." At that moment, a piece of floor floated by, revealing an unconscious figure, followed closely by a figure standing on the floor. Everyone caught in the fray noticed this scene. Stark quickly said to Parker, "That's the wizard, kid. Go get him. I'll handle this." Meanwhile, he wondered if Dr. Senna were here, perhaps the situation would be better. However, he didn't know that the Hulk within Dr. Senna had become extremely annoyed by the Gila invasion and the Surtur invasion before that, and refused his request to join the battle. Senna always sought the Hulk's power in moments of crisis, only to ignore him afterward, causing the Hulk within him to revolt. Even if he were to appear on the battlefield now, he would be nothing more than a burden. Ebony had already tied up Strange, intending to carry him away on a tile. However, on their way back, a magical robed figure appeared from nowhere and secretly snatched Strange away. Fortunately, Ebony spotted him in time, and after a thrilling chase and maneuvering around street corners and obstacles, he finally recaptured Strange. However, shortly after retrieving Strange, Ebony vaguely sensed a small child darting through the city, rapidly approaching him. With a cold snort, Ebony waved his hand, and a billboard rose from the ground, striking the unsuspecting Peter Parker hard. Parker grimaces in pain, the blow sending him reeling. But he immediately unleashed a web of spider silk, clinging to the tall buildings ahead, and resumed his advance. This time, Not only was he focused on the Ebony Lord ahead of him and Doctor Strange, lying on the floor tiles behind him, but he also had to be wary of the unidentified object that could strike again at any moment. The Ebony Lord was about to soar into the sky, carrying Strange with him. At this critical moment, Peter Parker finally arrived, spitting out a spider silk thread from one hand to tether Strange, while his other hand swung it onto a streetlight. The Ebony Lord scorned him. If it were the gravity of the blue planet pulling Strange, he might have been a little wary. But how much gravity could a streetlight hold? He soared upwards, not even looking. Peter Parker, delighted at having tethered Strange, was about to report the good news to Stark. However, he suddenly realized that neither he nor the streetlight seemed to be able to stop the Ebony Lord's return, and his face changed drastically. At this critical moment, a voice echoed from midair, "You bold demon! Behold my cudgel." Wu Muhao looked up, beholding a dazzling golden light. Before he could even see what it was, he felt a rush of wind sweeping towards him. The sudden attack caught Wu Muhao off guard, and before he could even utter a cry, he fell beneath the Wukong's cudgel. Wukong rescued Strange and quickly brought him back to the surface. "Are you a Chinese god?" Young Peter Parker, overcome with excitement, gazed upon the sudden appearance of the Wukong. Wukong merely nodded, then soared into the air without a second glance. "Which god is that?" Peter Parker asked curiously. Arriving, Stark looked at the entranced Parker and explained, "Son, that's China's great sage equaling heaven, Sun Wukong." With Wang's assistance, Stark dispatched Black Dwarf and then rushed to Parker's location, just in time to witness Sun Wukong returning with Strange. Meanwhile, more and more Vanguard troops were pouring into the streets. "Friday, clear this street immediately," Stark quickly instructed his new intelligent butler. "I don't understand why Senna won't come out. If you were here, the situation would be much better, Dr. Senna hasn't been able to transform lately, and he seems to have developed a rift with the Hulk," Lin Feng's voice called from behind. Meanwhile, countless Sun Wukong clones descended from the sky, mowing down the ferocious vanguards. "Professor Lin Feng," Stark said, feeling a sense of relief upon seeing Professor Lin Feng arrive. Professor Lin's knowledge of the situation meant he could report to the gods at any time. After a brief exchange of greetings with Stark, Lin Feng turned to Parker and said, "Peter Parker, I need your help. Please look after Doctor Strange, and as soon as he awakens, send him to the United States to support the government." Before Peter Parker could respond, Lin Feng had already stepped onto the clouds, preparing to depart for the United States. Although Rogers, as a fortified soldier, might have an advantage in individual combat, he would be unable to withstand the overwhelming onslaught. Furthermore, with Thanos still to appear, it was uncertain whether Ultron's machine army could hold off the attack. Stark felt more at ease upon seeing Lin Feng on the clouds. The clouds were a divine means of transportation given to Professor Lin Feng, and his presence signified that the gods were closely monitoring the war on Blue Star. As Lin Feng had said, the gods would only intervene in times of crisis. Ultron had not contacted Lin Feng for a long time, leaving him feeling a sense of unease. Arriving at the Avengers headquarters in the United States, Lin Feng found a devastated scene. Rogers lay unconscious, and Ultron, beside him, lay motionless. The Mind Stone on his forehead had vanished. "What's going on?" Lin Feng, seeing the situation was dire, dispatched the remaining vanguards while attempting to restart Ultron. Ultron quickly recovered. He looked at Lin Feng, marshalling his robot army to battle the vanguards, and said, "Professor Lin Feng, you're too late. Thanos has already left with the Space Stone and the Mind Stone." Lin Feng was puzzled, wondering how Thanos had managed to take the two stones without alerting him. "It was the Kree, Professor Lin Feng." Ultron seemed to see through Lin Feng's confusion and offered to explain. "They disguised themselves as American soldiers, approached Rogers, ambushed him, and stole the Space Stone. Then, they tore me out of cyberspace, rendering me a standalone machine, and took the Mind Stone. I didn't have time to connect online, but my camera captured them teleporting to outer space. This must be some kind of space jump technology, the same technology Thanos' vanguard used to reach the surface directly." Lin Feng cursed inwardly. Thanos was Earth's mortal enemy, and he had always held him in high regard, yet he had been too cautious about the Kree around him. He hadn't expected them to collude with Thanos, secretly disguising themselves to steal the two stones and hand them over to him. He was startled, and then something flashed through his mind. Wasn't Ronan a Kree? It seemed Thanos and the Kree had long been connected, something he had overlooked. Lin Feng had known of Ronan and Gamora's arrival on Earth in disguise, but he had never connected Ronan's Kree identity with the Kree on Earth aiding the US against the Chinese. That was his mistake. Strange had regained consciousness and arrived in the United States. Looking at a somewhat annoyed Lin Feng, he asked, "Professor Lin Feng, what should we do now?" At that moment, Thor's voice rang out, "Professor Lin Feng, we've discovered traces of Thanos on Xander. What should we do? Capture the leader first." Lin Feng quickly formulated a strategy and spoke to Thor. "Thor, if possible, rush over immediately and try to eliminate Thanos there. Otherwise, if he succeeds, half of all life in the universe will be wiped out," Thor replied, then severed the connection. Stark and Strange exchanged a glance. One possessing technological prowess, the other possessing magical powers. They felt it was best to support Thor at this moment. They exchanged a silent glance, eyeing the donut left behind, and then stepped onto it. Before leaving, Stark asked, "Professor, will you come with us?" Lin Feng shook his head. "I'm not used to the space environment, and there's a lack of oxygen there. I'll clean up the battlefield on Earth first. If conditions permit, the gods will send me there." The vanguards were astonishing in number. Like a raging plague, they spread rapidly across the globe, ruthlessly harvesting lives wherever they touched, even transforming some into their own kind. Faced with this frenzied onslaught, Sun Wukong's clones and Ultron's robot army fought hard but were gradually overwhelmed. Even with the support of the armies of the various nations on Blue Star, it was a drop in the bucket. Unable to match the vanguard's swift speed. After watching Stark and Strange depart, Lin Feng returned to China and summoned Yang Jian and Roaring Sky Dog. Like a sharp scythe, they swiftly harvested the lives of the vanguards. Suddenly, a deafening roar erupted. Lin Feng looked up to see the energy shield in the sky crumble under the fierce attack of the massive warship, instantly exposing the fairy island to the warship's fire. Instead of deploying troops, the warship concentrated its firepower on an intensive bombardment of the fairy island, simultaneously spreading its bombardment into the Chinese territory, as if challenging Lin Feng's presence. Lin Feng snorted coldly, his eyes filled with disdain. Trying to sink the fairy island with such a small firepower was like trying to shake a tree with an ant. The giant Taoist power was more than enough to handle it, and he paid no heed to the incoming artillery fire. However, at that moment, he was surprised to see Hashimoto Kanryu appear on the street. The vanguards on the street had been mostly wiped out, leaving only ruins. Hashimoto Kanryu looked up at the massive warship in the sky and shouted at the top of her lungs, "Stop fighting! End the invasion!" She waved her hands, as if naively demanding a ceasefire. Lin Feng hurried to her side, anxiously asking, "Are you crazy?" The warships in the sky had already trained their fire on them, a high-intensity barrage roaring down. They knew full well that this was the spokesperson for the gods, and they must not be underestimated. Tears streamed down Hashimoto Kanryu's face, and she choked with sobs. "Professor Lin Feng, I'm sorry, but I really don't want to see war again." Lin Feng's heart was filled with mixed emotions, and the previous scene flashed through his mind. This innocent girl had tried to persuade the vanguard to stop their invasion when they arrived on the surface, but was taken to safety by robots. Now, finally free, she rushed to the scene and tried to appeal to the Titan creatures to stop the invasion. As the artillery fire was about to fall, Lin Feng waved his hand, easily deflecting the attack. He turned to Hashimoto Kanryu and said sternly, "The threat of war hasn't been lifted yet. Go back quickly." "I'm here." Hashimoto Kanryu stared at him blankly, and Lin Feng quickly glanced at the large screen, confirming that it wasn't focused on him, then stepped onto the clouds and prepared to head for Xander. Just then, the Guardians of the Galaxy had just dealt with Ronan, and before they could even breathe a sigh of relief, Thanos slammed the Infinity Gauntlet into the ground of Xander, triggering a violent earthquake. Thanos gazed lovingly at Gamora and asked, "Daughter, tell me, why did you betray me?" Gamora replied with a cold expression, "Then tell me why, after destroying my planet and killing my mother, you still adopted me as your daughter." That memory, a painful one from Gamora's childhood, was so tragic and bloody that it was sealed from her mind as an adult to protect her. Upon arriving on Earth, Ronan and her understanding of Thanos led her to gradually question her own origins. Chapter 32 The Two People's Suspicion of Lin Feng. Chapter 32 The Two Are Suspicious of Lin Feng, 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster Chapter 32 The Two Are Suspicious of Lin Feng. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min were very curious. What did this person from the Ministry of State Security come to Lin Feng to find out? Lin Feng is a historian, and the two have nothing in common. Zhuang Fei smiled and said, "It's like this. We investigated Professor Lin and found that he is a history enthusiast in his daily life. Apart from that, there's nothing special about him. Well, we have also investigated this situation and asked him in person." Zhao Songyang nodded. "But there is a question," Zhuang Fei said with a puzzled look. "Why does Professor Lin know about Sun Wukong? You have also investigated the matter of Sun Wukong, but you have very little information, right? But he has more information than you, isn't that strange? Could it be that his channels for obtaining information are even better than yours?" Zhuang Fei and his colleagues received an order from Chen Haitian to come to Wukong University to investigate Lin Feng. When Chen Haitian saw the video of Lin Feng's lecture, he was surprised how this person knew all this. The appearance of Tathagata Buda later surprised him even more, because this confirmed what Lin Feng said. So, he asked his subordinates to ask Lin Feng why he knew all this. Hearing this, Zhao Songyang and Fang Min frowned. Of course, it was not because of Lin Feng, but because of Zhuang Fei's words, as if Professor Lin was a weirdo. They had come into contact with Professor Lin. How could such a person who had a deep understanding of ancient times, was diligent and studious, had good handwriting, and was gentle to others be a weirdo? Immediately, Zhao Songyang and Fang Min were a little unwelcome to the two people from the Ministry of State Security. They were both intellectuals from that era. Stubborn and stubborn. Even their superiors dared to talk back. Fang Min's face fell. "Don't you know that the experts are among the common people? Besides, have you forgotten how much technology private enterprises brought to the country during the industrial survey?" Haha, Professor Fang, don't get excited. Seeing this historical figure's reaction, Zhuang Fei quickly smiled. He didn't know what was wrong with him. It seemed he hadn't said anything. He added, "I know that. But don't you think Professor Lin is exaggerating a bit?" "Exaggerated? How is that exaggerating?" At this moment, Principal Zhao Songyang, who had remained silent until then, spoke in an unpleasant tone. "Do you think Professor Lin is also a figure from ancient Earth who has now awakened?" No, we don't think so," Zhuang Fei said, embarrassed, and hurriedly explained. He couldn't say that. If it got out, people would think they were just some kind of people in the Ministry of State Security, who would find such a thing so outrageous. Zhuang Fei looked at the drooping faces of Zhao Songyang and Fang Min, still confused as to why they were suddenly angry. But after seeing the two people's reactions, he also understood that if he continued to ask like this, there would be no other results, and he might even be asked to leave. So, he had no choice but to stand up and said, "I'm sorry, President, Professor Fang, I'll stop here for now. We have something else to do over there, so I'll take my leave now. No need to see you off," Zhao Songyang said. He picked up the tea and took a sip. This is called serving tea and seeing off guests. Seeing this, Zhuang Fei smiled helplessly in his heart and walked out with his companions. Zhao Songyang and Fang Min looked at each other, and then they both shook their heads. They didn't know what was wrong with the people from the Ministry of State Security who came to investigate Professor Lin. Let alone Professor Lin being a freak. Even if he really was a freak, so what? He was able to research things from ancient times and present the information to the world. This is an unprecedented event. No one should think of hindering this. Zhuang Fei and his companions left Wukong University. Sitting in the car, Zhuang Fei took out his mobile phone and called Chen Haitian. "Hello, Director, this is Zhuang Fei. I've come to Wukong University to inquire about Lin Feng's situation." Zhuang Fei recounted the details of the recent findings. Chen Haitian frowned upon hearing this. He hadn't expected Zhao Songyang and Fang Min to defend Lin Feng so much. However, after thinking it over, he seemed to understand. Lin Feng was currently researching events from that era, so it was natural for these two old men to defend him. He pondered for a moment and said, "I understand. Don't investigate Lin Feng for now. Wait until I finish dealing with things here." "Yes." After hanging up the phone, Chen Haitian pondered for a moment. The situation in Xiangjiang City hadn't been resolved yet, so Lin Feng's matter should be put aside for now. I wonder where this Mandarin has hidden himself? Could he be a rat or a cockroach and have disappeared into the sewer? Chen Haitian wondered. They had searched for a long time, but there was no trace of the Mandarin. This was truly worrying. Meanwhile, in the United States, Nick was watching the battle video Tony had sent him. Finally, He watched the massive beam of light emanating from the Mandarin pierce through a building at an angle, then soar into the sky, piercing through the dark clouds. He gasped, a look of shock on his face. This power is truly terrifying. No wonder Tony lost. Besides, that son Wukong certainly wouldn't be able to withstand it. Nick frowned and pondered. It seems Tony's power alone is far from enough. We must assemble the Avengers as soon as possible, Nick thought to himself. This was the plan he'd been toying with recently, assembling a team of supernatural powers to deal with future dangers. Ding-ling-ling. Ding-ling-ling, but just then, a rapid ring rang out. Nick saw the incoming call alert and felt a sense of helplessness, but he had to answer it. He pressed a button on the desk. Suddenly, a virtual screen appeared. On it were the leaders of SHIELD. One of them barked, "Nick Fury, what are you doing? How did things turn out like this? Don't you know what to do in this situation?" The other person was talking about the Mandarin. According to SHIELD's old practice, if the Mandarin stole the dangerous Tesseract, SHIELD would immediately deploy troops and heavy weaponry, seal off the city and streets, and confront him. "Commander, times have changed," Nick said. "You've seen the video I sent you, haven't you? If we use the old methods to fight the Mandarin, it would inevitably cause widespread urban destruction, with countless casualties. Besides, you've seen what's happening in China. They haven't deployed a large-scale military or heavy weaponry, suggesting they're also concerned about this. So we should change our tactics. The Avengers plan is the best solution right now." Nick had already submitted the Avengers plan, but his superiors were holding it up, worried that it wouldn't work. Several leaders paused, pondering their decision. After a moment, one of them said, "Can't we train our own people?" Nick shook his head. The Avengers need exceptional individuals with specialized abilities, like Tony Stark. "So, we can't train them." Silence followed. After a while, the leader who had spoken earlier said, "Nick Fury, there is no other way now. Just try your method. If you can capture the Mandarin and retrieve the Tesseract, then it means your method works, and we agree to the Avengers plan." Hearing this, Nick's heart moved, and he quickly said, "Yes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." 203. Chapter 202 Guardians of the Galaxy, Show Up. 203. Chapter 202, Guardians of the Galaxy, Show Up. 2024-1013 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 202, Guardians of the Galaxy, Show Up. She has been investigating her past, and during this time she had a battle with Nebula. After a fierce battle, her sisterhood with Nebula deepened. However, even Nebula could not accept the fact that her father was invading everywhere. Thanos looked at the familiar figure in front of him, his eyes revealing sadness. He gave a wry smile, but still patiently explained, "This is actually a simple arithmetic problem, my daughter. The universe has limited space and limited resources, while the population is constantly growing. Excessive population growth will deplete limited resources. Once the resources are lost, what will happen to humanity? Isn't it death? That's how my home planet, Titan, perished." He fell into deep thought, recalling the past. Back then, because the population was growing too fast and there was no new resource to replace it, Titan fell into crisis. "I proposed an idea to randomly eliminate half of the population, regardless of rich or poor, old or young, male or female, noble or humble, fair and merciful. But they thought I was too extreme, called me a butcher, and expelled me. The result is predictable. They didn't listen to my advice, and Titan was destroyed. And I, who gave advice and was exiled, became the survivor." Thanos' gaze grew firm. "It's the same in the universe. The population is growing too fast. What's wrong with what I did? If I had followed my plan earlier, would Titan have perished? To save the universe from crisis, I used the bodies of the fallen Titans as vanguards, a constant reminder of my conviction, randomly slaughtering half the population to allow the universe to breathe." Thanos' gaze softened again. "I call this mercy. You're using mercy as a pretext for slaughter, vainly trying to uphold justice." Gamora's voice was laced with sarcasm. Thanos' words struck her as both ridiculous and absurd. Yet, for a moment, she couldn't find the words to refute him. Thanos' words seemed to hold some truth. Whether it was her home planet, Thanos' home planet, Titan, or Xander, where they were now, or even the blue planet she had visited, they all faced the same problem, a rapidly increasing population, while resources far outstripped this growth. A wavering feeling welled up in her heart, as if something was tempting her to betray her sympathy for life. Jason Quill couldn't help but burst into a rant, then bluntly retorted, "After you've slaughtered half the population, won't the population grow? The resources saved might even cause the remaining population to grow even faster. By then, the population might even be larger than it is now. What can you do?" Quill's words dawned on Gamora. While resources are indeed limited, the population is constantly growing. Thanos' tactics might temporarily alleviate the supply-demand imbalance, but they only address the symptoms, not the root cause. The hidden dangers remain. Population is eternal, and the problem of population growth will never cease. She steeled her resolve to stop Thanos, stepped back, and stood beside Quill, offering him a firm, supportive gaze. Thanos even caught a glimpse of admiration and emotion in her gaze. Meanwhile, Grodd and Rocket Raccoon joined them, ready to fight alongside these newfound allies. They had all been released from the same prison, and through their shared struggles, they had gradually built trust and reliance. Just recently, they had teamed up to defeat Ronan. Drax, weapon in hand, stood beside them. Quill looked at the assembled crowd, a surge of emotion welling in his heart. He looked at Thanos and shouted, "See? This is us, the Guardians of the Galaxy." Thanos gazed at them, each one scarred and slightly exhausted. He didn't rush into battle, but sat down to give them a chance to recover. He murmured to himself, "For justice, I'll do anything. Even if it means decimating half the universe's population, so what? Like this kid said, I still can't stop the insane population growth." "Hey, my name is Quill, not kid," Jason Quill couldn't help but retort. Thanos ignored his protest. "But it doesn't matter. My actions have left a spark of hope for humanity throughout the universe. I've given them the right to choose a better life again, the opportunity to reflect on their actions, and enough time to find alternative resources. Isn't that a good thing? I call it mercy." "What's wrong with that, you lunatic? You killed innocent lives and then told them you gave them the freedom to choose?" Rocket Raccoon couldn't help but scoff. Thanos' eyes hardened. "Only with sacrifice can there be choice. The right to choose is based on sacrifice, not a gratuitous gift. If no one is willing to sacrifice, then I will have no choice but to harden my heart and make the choice for them." Hearing this, Gamora retorted, "You are so hard-hearted that you can force others to die. Why don't you sacrifice yourself for the universe you see?" Thanos' expression was solemn. "When I achieve this goal, I will choose to end my own life without regret." Gamora fell silent. Thanos had even considered martyrdom for his obsessive ideals. But his ideals were so extreme that she was at a loss. Thanos fell into deep thought. "Every night, in the stillness of the world, the souls I have slaughtered seem to cry out in my ears, telling of their grievances and their unwillingness. I feel guilty towards them, but I will not atone for them until my ideal is realized." Gamora's eyes welled up, and she recalled the slaughter of her unarmed compatriots as a child. Thanos chuckled self-deprecatingly. "Indeed, after slaughtering half the human population, I will sit in a manor and watch the sun rise as usual, illuminating this grateful universe. Then, I will choose to end my own life. As for what happens after my death, I have no control over it. Even if the population swells again, it seems to have little to do with me." But then he changed the subject. "But that doesn't mean no one will intervene. After me, perhaps thousands of idealists will embark on this bloody path for the sake of all life in the universe. The most compassionate wisdom often requires the most ruthless means to achieve it. The most difficult decisions require the strongest will." Thanos' words cast a solemn look on the Guardians of the Galaxy's faces. While population growth is indeed endless, those like Thanos who seek to secure temporary safety for the universe through the most direct and violent means will never cease. Even if Thanos dies, thousands of his successors will continue this brutal and insane act. This is the reality they least want to face. We can't predict what will happen after our death, but at least for now, we can stop you. Everyone has the right to choose their own way of life. You can't sacrifice the lives of others for your so-called righteous ideals." Quill, unusually serious, rebuked Thanos. Everyone's faces were stern, their hearts filled with determination. While they couldn't predict the future, they could seize the present. Quill regained his usual relaxed demeanor. "Come on, big purple potato. Show me your strength." Thanos ignored Quill's provocation. He gazed at the exhausted yet high-spirited group, especially Gamora beside Quill, and a wave of pity welled up in his heart. However, seeing their resolute gazes, he stood up, decided to respect their choice, and let them continue. Sensing Thanos' seriousness, everyone smiled at each other, as if ready to die. Thanos had just seized the Power Stone from them, but now, its terrifying power, capable of destroying Xander, lay quietly within a gauntlet, forcing them to be wary. Groot stepped forward, fearlessly charging Thanos, completely disregarding his own safety. However, Thanos easily parried their attacks. Armed with the Collector's Ether, the Kree provided Cosmic Cube, the Mind Stone, and the newly seized Power Stone. All four of these gems were more than enough to defeat the exhausted Guardians of the Galaxy. With a simple wave of his hand, Rocket was knocked to the ground. He taunted, "You, the whole gang, struggled against Ronan, wielding the Power Stone. Now I have all four, your efforts are in vain." Quill, barely able to stand, stubbornly declared, "Even if it's in vain, it's better than doing nothing." Gamora staggered to her feet. "Yes, there's a difference between accepting death and waiting to die. We firmly believe our actions are meaningful." Thanos shook his head. "Then I will send you on your way." With a wave of his hand, Groot collapsed. "I am Groot." Groot uttered only these words before giving up his life. The few survivors had no time to grieve. This was a brutal war, one that left no room for hesitation or pause. They could cherish Groot's memory, but only after the war was over. They launched a final effort, attempting to attack Thanos and halt his advance. Thanos frowned, taken by surprise by the sudden sword strike from behind. He didn't turn back. "Nebula, aren't you seeking the Soul Stone?" Before Nebula could reply, she was slapped and sent flying. Thanos didn't even look at Nebula. The betrayal of his two beloved daughters filled him with grief. Fortunately, the loyalty of his 5 world-destroying generals offered some comfort. But then he heard a voice he hadn't wanted to hear. "Purple Potato Head, take my axe." Thor's voice reached him first, and he appeared in midair. Stormbreaker already swung out. A thunderous roar, carrying the might of heaven and earth, rushed towards Thanos. Thanos chose not to resist. He saw that Stormbreaker's power was even greater than that of Odin he had faced before, and a head-on confrontation was unwise. With a flick of his hand, he used the Space Stone to hide in the virtual realm. Stormbreaker pierced Thanos' body without causing any damage, leaving Thor stunned. In mid-air, countless magical chains bound Thanos. It was Strange who had taken action, attacking Thanos simultaneously from countless dimensions, binding his hands. The powerful magical force momentarily trapped Thanos, but he deftly manipulated the stone in his hand to free himself. A barrage of missiles, manufactured using Stark's nanotechnology, hurled Thanos like a cannonball. These missiles, incredibly destructive, were a product of Stark's nanotechnology. However, Thanos blocked the attack with his bare hands, not even employing the stone's power. This astonishing defense left even Stark stunned. "Is this your strength? I'm truly disappointed. How can you stop me like this?" Thanos, ignoring the attacks from all around him, gazed greedily at the time stone around Strange's neck. His fierce gaze sent a wave of fear into Strange's heart. "If their strength isn't enough, what about mine?" A solemn and sacred voice rang out. Thanos slowly turned around to see Djun bathed in a divine light. "Your Excellency," Strange exclaimed in delight. Thanos' immense offensive and defensive power, combined with the power of the 4 Infinity Stones, had left him helpless. Now, a figure of unrivaled strength had appeared to confront him. It was truly a blessing. Stark was also overjoyed, sighing with relief as he beheld Djun before their eyes. Only the Guardians of the Galaxy remained puzzled. Gamora, observing the figure she had focused on while gathering information on Earth, felt a sense of unease, unsure if he possessed the strength to defeat Thanos. Djun, gazing at Thanos before him, felt a sense of solemnity. Thanos, Odin, Hela, and the newly ascended Thor, had all reached the pinnacle of intelligent life, on the path to the 3rd level of existence. They had grasped the mysteries of the laws of nature and mastered the power to manipulate them. Ordinary intelligent beings posed no threat to them. It was particularly noteworthy that Thanos now possessed 4 Infinity Stones. These gems embody the laws of the universe. Thanos' possession of these 4 treasures was like divine intervention, allowing him to delve deeper into the realm of laws. At this moment, he even surpassed Dormammu, who had already half-stepped into the realm of laws. Dormammu sacrificed his physical body for the dark dimension, while Thanos could easily penetrate it with a single thought. Lin Feng couldn't imagine what the scene would be like if he had gathered all 6 Infinity Stones. Thanos gazed at Dijun, who had appeared on Xander, and sneered, "God, why do you stand by and watch when lives perish because of themselves, but intervene when they perish because of me?" Dijun understood that he was being blamed for failing to save the lives of Titan, but it was an unprovoked disaster. At that time, he had not yet obtained the system, and he never easily interfered in human affairs. Therefore, in the face of Thanos' accusations, he chose to remain silent. Thanos mistakenly believed Dijun was guilty and continued to accuse him. "You are a god. Are gods so great that they can watch living beings suffer and die of famine, but cannot bear to see them suffer misfortune? If you are so great, why did you create life in the first place?" Chapter 33 The Space Tunnel Device is built. Chapter 33 The Space Tunnel Device is complete. 2024-08-19 Author, Good Monster. Chapter 33 The Space Tunnel Device is complete. Nick knew this was a difficult request, but now was not the time to dwell on it. The leader continued, "To complete the mission, you are permitted to use the aerospace carrier. Remember, the cosmic cube contains immense power. We must recapture it. We must not allow it to fall into the hands of the Mandarin or the Chinese." "Yes," Nick said. Conceptual aircraft carriers like the aerospace carrier had already been developed by the United States, but they had never been publicly displayed. This time, if it weren't for the cosmic cube's importance, it wouldn't have been so easily displayed. After the leaders finished their instructions, they all logged off. Nick also closed the video link. He paused. Currently, the only confirmed candidate is Tony, but he hasn't fully expressed his intention to join the Avengers. However, that's not important for now. We need to find another person to help. Tony's power alone isn't enough. Nick thought of the person he had recently dug out of the Antarctic Ocean. Nick arrived at the assigned lodgings, explained the situation, and extended an invitation. "Steve Rogers, we need your help now." Nick looked at the man before him. He was wearing a vest, his muscles well developed, yet not bulky. He possessed considerable strength. It was none other than Captain America. During the battle with Hydra, he had lost control of his plane and crashed into the Antarctic Ocean. It was only recently discovered and excavated by SHIELD, but now, he seemed to have a hard time fitting into modern society. After all, so much had changed over the years. Rogers thought for a moment, then shook his head. "Mr. Fury, I'm sorry, but I'm a man left behind. This era doesn't belong to me, so I decline your invitation." Rogers tried to fit in, but found himself completely out of place. He had no desire to pursue such superheroic pursuits. Nick's remaining eye furrowed his brow. "This world needs you to save it. Have you forgotten your past? Where's that man who risked his life to catch a grenade for his comrades?" Rogers froze, looking up at Nick, surprise in his eyes. He hadn't expected Nick to know this. This rekindled a fire within him. Nick observed Rogers' surprised reaction and continued, "There are many lives waiting for you to save. You feel abandoned by the times, but I believe this world needs your help, too." Nick paused, then added, "If you still consider yourself a soldier, then follow me. I'm leaving for China now." With that, Nick turned and walked away. He didn't say anything more. He had said everything he needed to say. If Rogers still didn't follow, then he had misjudged him. Da, da, da. The sound of Nick's leather shoes faded away. Rogers stood there, head slightly lowered, fists clenched, hesitant and struggling. Scenes of past battles flashed through his mind. Finally, the spark in his heart turned to flame, his clenched fists loosened, his decision made. He picked up his backpack from the ground and walked towards Nick. Nick was waiting outside. The moment Rogers emerged with his bag, Agent Maria beside him exclaimed in surprise, "Director, he's out." "Yes," Nick nodded, a smile crossing his face. He hadn't misjudged him. Rogers approached Nick and said, "Mr. Fury, I accept your invitation." Nick nodded and said, "Let's go. Time is running out. We're heading to Xiangjiang City in China. However, you'd better be prepared." "This trip might surprise you," Rogers asked, puzzled. "What do you mean?" Rogers thought, "I've even encountered a freak like Red Skull before, so what else could surprise me?" "You'll see when you get there," Nick smiled. The scene changed. Xiangjiang. A factory. Various mechanical devices lay on the ground, each connected by wires of varying thicknesses. Most strikingly, in the center of the apparatus stood a massive device resembling a rocket propeller. However, it was clearly not a rocket propeller. The wiring from the surrounding, highly technological devices all connected to this massive device. At a row of controllers, the Mandarin worked excitedly, his fingers rapidly tapping away at the keyboard as he debugged the space tunnel. Almost there. Almost there, it's almost done, the Mandarin muttered excitedly to himself. As the leader of the 10 Commandments, he possessed more than just magical powers, he also held several highly regarded doctoral degrees. He was a gifted scientist, and with the help of his magic, he had been able to build such a powerful underground empire. Of course, this wasn't something he had achieved out of thin air. Soon, with a humming sound, the rocket-like space tunnel device lit up with a white light. Debugging complete, no anomalies found. Success, the Mandarin paused, observing the scene, his face filled with excitement. Finally, his master's mission had been accomplished. Although I can't say that I have fully mastered the principle of space tunnels, this device is enough to open a fixed space tunnel, the Mandarin said excitedly. He did not fully master this technology. Therefore, what he made now can only be regarded as a castrated version of the space tunnel. It can only open a space tunnel in a fixed place. It cannot open a space tunnel in any corner of the universe. Next, we have to wait for the master to come back, the Mandarin said. Loki took the cosmic cube to find Lin Feng. In order to operate this device, it is necessary to rely on the power of the cosmic cube. There is no substitute. It's like a gasoline car. You have to add gasoline to it before it can move. Just after the Mandarin was busy. After a while, a blue light flashed, and Loki appeared. Loki saw the tool in front of him full of the colors of the earth, and his face became surprised. The Mandarin strode over and said respectfully, "Master, you're back." Yes, Loki came to his senses, pointed at the tool, and asked the Mandarin, have you finished it?" "Yes, the device to open the space tunnel is already built. As long as the master uses the cosmic magic tool, the space tunnel can be opened and the Chitauri army can descend on Earth." "Excellent. Very good," Loki praised, very satisfied. He had not expected this tool to be so fast. He added, "When I become the master of Earth, I will definitely give you a job with 2 days off a week, 6 social insurances and 1 housing fund, absolutely no overtime, and if you do, triple your wages." From the human information Loki had collected, many people wanted jobs with 2 days off a week, insurances, and other requirements, so he thought this must be a good job. Thank you, Master." The Mandarin looked a little strange, but he didn't dare say anything more. After making his promise, Loki looked back at the tunnel mechanism and excitedly declared, "Activate it now. Open the tunnel, and let the Chitauri army descend." "Now?" the Mandarin asked. He sensed his master was a bit anxious. He'd just returned, and already he was eager to open the tunnel, not even taking a break. Well, time waits for no one, Loki thought about Lin Feng's words, his eyes narrowed. Next, ancient figures like Sun Wukong will awaken one after another. We need to quickly deploy the Chitauri army and seize Earth, so we can better counter them. Of course, you don't have to worry. I've heard that Sun Wukong isn't that powerful, and those who have awakened are no match for him. The Mandarin, curious, asked, "Where did your master learn this information?" "From a great scholar named Lin Feng," Loki beamed. Speaking of Lin Feng, his tone was filled with respect. He's a true scholar, painstakingly researching data, then selflessly sharing his discoveries. He's like a beacon in the darkness, guiding others. He's truly magnificent. Hearing Loki's praise, Mandarin became curious about Lin Feng and wanted to get to know him. After all, they might work together in the future. But he didn't know he'd soon meet Lin Feng. "Alright, don't waste time, get started," Loki exclaimed, then urged. "Yes." Meanwhile, Chen Haitian was still searching for Mandarin. Xiangjiang City was quite large, and with no clues about Mandarin's escape, finding him was no easy task. Damn it! Where the hell is he hiding? Chen Haitian was furious. His eyes were red from not resting for so long. Furthermore, a beard had grown on his chin, and he hadn't had the time or energy to care for it, making him look much shaggier than before. Stark said he might be planning something big with the Tesseract. After all this time, he probably already has it done. Chen Haitian was anxious and a little apprehensive, feeling like something bad was about to happen. Boom boom boom, just then, A rumbling sound echoed from the sky. Chen Haitian looked up and saw a red steel armor flying towards him at high speed. Iron Man, why is he here again? Chen Haitian frowned. Of course, he wasn't unwelcome. He was coming again, so he must be here to help. Bang! Iron Man landed in front of Chen Haitian, stirring up a gust of air that spread out in all directions. Chen Haitian waved away the dust. Tony looked at Chen Haitian and asked, Director Chen, have you found the Mandarin? Tony changed into a new suit of steel armor and hurried over. Of course, the palladium element was still eating away at his body. But at this critical moment, he couldn't afford to worry about anything else. No, Chen Haitian shook his head, saying, I don't know where he's hiding. What did you say? Tony was startled. His unease intensified at this. He'd seen the Mandarin was planning something with the Tesseract before, and now that so much time had passed, he might have already done it. Damn it. Without asking nonsense like why haven't we found it, Tony quickly requested Jarvis's help. Jarvis, check for gamma-ray emissions. He planned to use the same method as before to locate the Mandarin's hiding place. Yes, sir, Jarvis said. Less than 3 minutes later, Jarvis' voice rang out, Sir, the gamma-ray emissions are increasing in intensity. This intensity far exceeds what was emitted previously, but it's likely coming from the Tesseract. Tony's face darkened. While he had no idea what the Mandarin was doing with the Tesseract, it had to be something bad. He immediately said, Locate the location of the emission. With that, he launched his Iron Man suit into the air, ready to rush over. But Chen Haitian, upon seeing this, hurriedly called out, Mr. Stark, have you found the Mandarin's hiding place? He had overheard Tony and Jarvis's exchange. Yes, the Mandarin is using the Tesseract to do something. I'm going to stop him now, Tony declared midair, turning and flying away. Chen Haitian was stunned for a moment. Then, his reaction was immediate. The Mandarin is already using the Tesseract, he cursed inwardly, damn it, and quickly pulled out his intercom, shouting, Assemble. Emergency assembling. The Mandarin has been found, but just as he was about to call out, a sudden, loud boom erupted, and a brilliant, azure beam of light shot straight into the sky from afar. Suddenly, the wind and clouds swirled, and the wind blew violently. The sky, struck by the beam, twisted and formed a vortex. At the center of the vortex, lightning bolts as thick as bowls swirled, accompanied by a deafening roar of thunder. This scene was so bizarre that it attracted the attention and curiosity of many passers-by on the ground below. Even the most experienced elders had never seen anything like it. Holy shit, look at the sky. What's going on? It really is. What's going on? I don't know. Could it be what that Lin Feng on the internet said, that another ancient figure has awakened? It's possible. What the hell? Such a big scene. Are you sure these aren't aliens? Don't believe rumors. Don't spread them. Could it be some kind of unusual phenomenon? Like a mirage or a rainbow? Get out of here. It's already like this, and you're still talking about mirages and rainbows. That's right. You can throw your brains away. This situation definitely doesn't occur naturally. Discussions raged. Workers, students, the elderly, and children all witnessed the scene, but none of them realized the danger. Only those with a strong sixth sense had a slight sense of danger, but they didn't understand what was happening. Boom, Tony was speeding along when he suddenly stopped. His face changed drastically. He saw a brilliant azure beam of light connecting the sky to the location ahead. It looked incredibly strange. Damn it. This must be the work of that Mandarin? What on earth is he trying to do? Tony couldn't figure it out. But he didn't think too much about it. He continued to fly towards the beam of light. He wanted to stop the other party as soon as possible and shut down the beam of light. For some reason, as soon as the beam of light appeared, the uneasy feeling in his heart completely erupted. This means that the beam of light itself is dangerous, or it will bring some danger. We must stop him. Tony turned on high-power flight. Under this consumption, palladium elements were continuously emitted, eroding his body. Sir, you have been poisoned by palladium elements. Stop and receive treatment. At this time, Jarvis' voice rang out. There is no time. We can't stop, Tony refused anxiously. The blood vessels on his neck were already faintly visible in black. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.